Chapter 1543. The poison corpse kept attacking Chu Fengmian as if it did not know what fatigue was. However, Chu Fengmian was already familiar with the poison corpse's fighting style. It was just pure brute force, so Chu Fengmian could handle it with ease. He easily dodged all the attacks. However, compared to the poison corpse's attacks, the poison corpse's poison was extremely poisonous. The lethal poison emitted from his body was incomparably troublesome. Whenever the poison corpse approached, Chu Fengmian would hastily retreat. Even though Chu Fengmian had the half-step immortal real body and the sky-devouring secret skill to rely on, he might not be able to withstand the poison corpse's poison. However, he might not be able to completely resist the poison. Once he came into contact with the poison, it was enough to consign Chu Fengmian to eternal damnation. Chu Fengmian didn't dare to underestimate it. What kind of poison technique did the president of the Jianwang Chamber of Commerce practice? Chu Fengmian could not help but frown as he dodged the president's attacks again and again. The president of the Jianwang Chamber of Commerce was definitely an expert of the half-step celestial realm. He was probably only one step away from the celestial realm. However, such an expert was unexpectedly devoured by the poison technique and turned into a poison corpse. Fortunately, the president of the Jianwang Chamber of Commerce had become a poison corpse without consciousness. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to fight against an expert of the half-step celestial realm. Chu Fengmian flashed again and again. The sword in his hand had already killed the poison corpse hundreds of times, riddling it with holes. At the same time, the poison corpse's strength was getting weaker and weaker. It's time to end this. 3 suns. Boom! Pure yang heavenly fire condensed on Chu Fengmian's sword. With a slash, a sea of fire shrouded the poison corpse. The poison corpse roared and struggled madly in the sea of fire, but its body was burned to ashes little by little. As the flames burned bit by bit, the poison corpse was also burned to ashes. Only a dark green crystal was left where the poison corpse had been. There's still a remnant? Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with surprise when he saw the green crystal. The pure yang heavenly flame was enough to burn everything. No matter how tough the poison corpse was, it couldn't escape the burning of the pure yang heavenly flame. However, this dark green crystal was actually able to withstand the burning of the pure yang heavenly flame without any damage. Chu Fengmian walked over. Just as he approached the jade green crystal, a poisonous fog suddenly gushed out from the jade green crystal. Boom! Chu Fengmian gathered a devouring force in his palm, blocking the poisonous mist completely. This dark green crystal is the source of the poison? Chu Fengmian noticed that the poisonous fog in the surroundings should be emitted from the dark green crystal. The president of the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce was also controlled by the dark green crystal and turned into a poison corpse. Dark green and shaped like dragon scales. Could this be a poison dragon crystal? Chu Fengmian observed the dark green crystal and saw that it resembled a dragon's scale. He couldn't help but say, poison dragons were a special species of the dragon race. They were born with extremely terrifying poison. Although they were of the dragon type, they had always been rejected by the dragon race. The number of poison dragons in the world was less than 100, so Chu Fengmian had never seen one before. As for the poison dragon crystal, it was the source of all the poison in the body of a poison dragon. It was said that many poison dragons used to belong to the dragon race. Later on, their bodies underwent a mutation and grew a poison dragon crystal, turning them into a poison dragon. The poison dragon crystal was the origin of a poison dragon and also one of the most powerful poisons in the world. Therefore, many poison cultivators in the world wanted to obtain the poison dragon crystal to cultivate their poison arts. Chu Fengmian had once obtained a poison dragon crystal by chance. However, that poison dragon crystal was only the size of a thumb. However, the dark green crystal before him was as big as a fist. Therefore, although Chu Fengmian felt that the dark green crystal was similar to a poison dragon crystal, he didn't dare to confirm it. The higher the cultivation of a poison dragon, the bigger the poison dragon crystal in its body and the stronger the poison. the thumb-sized poison dragon crystal that Chu Fengmian had seen before should belong to a true Emperor poison dragon. However, according to the records, Emperor Gu's poison dragon crystal was only the size of 2 or 3 fingers. However, the poison dragon crystal before him was the size of a fist. Such a huge poison dragon crystal showed how powerful the poison dragon was when it was alive. Even the weakest poison dragon would be a half-step celestial realm poison dragon, or even a celestial realm poison dragon, to have such a huge poison dragon crystal. The poison dragon crystal is formed from pure spiritual energy. Although it's extremely poisonous, it can be dissolved into pure spiritual energy that can be used to break through to the next realm. Chu Fengmian looked at the poison dragon crystal and guessed why the president of the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce fell into such a state. The poison dragon crystal was extremely precious, not only because of the poison it contained, but also because it was the condensation of a poison dragon's life energy. It could be said that the spiritual energy contained in it was much purer than that of any ancient saint pill. Therefore, in the ancient records, there were some masters who hunted down the poison dragon crystal and used special methods to erase the poison of the poison dragon crystal, or resist the poison of the poison dragon crystal. With the help of the poison dragon crystal, they could break through in one fell swoop. The last president of the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce had probably reached the peak of the half-step celestial realm and was only one step away from the Emperor realm. He couldn't break through, so he took the risk to refine the poison dragon crystal and step into the celestial realm in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, the president of the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce underestimated the poison dragon crystal, and at the same time, he wasn't prepared. As a result, he was devoured by the poison dragon crystal and turned into a poison corpse. The poison dragon crystal is a good thing, but it's also a double-edged sword. If I'm not careful, I'll be consigned to eternal damnation. Chu Fengmian looked at the poison dragon crystal with flickering eyes. The spiritual energy contained in this poison dragon crystal was probably comparable to the spiritual energy contained in dozens or even hundreds of primordial holy pills. After swallowing this poison dragon crystal, Chu Fengmian was 100% sure that he could break through to the Emperor realm. Even after stepping into the Emperor realm, one would still be able to obtain enormous benefits. Heaven devouring. Chu Fengmian sized up the poison dragon crystal. Suddenly, he circulated his devouring power and grabbed the poison dragon crystal. The poison in this poison dragon crystal was so terrifying that even a half-step celestial realm master couldn't refine it. But now, Chu Fengmian planned to refine this poison dragon crystal. Chu Fengmian had the heaven-devouring power, which was enough to dissolve most of the poison in this poison dragon crystal. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had a half-step immortal true body, so refining this poison dragon crystal was not impossible. Chapter 1544. Once the poisonous dragon crystal was refined, it would be a great opportunity. Chu Fengmian would not let it go. Chu Fengmian made a prompt decision and took action. Chu Fengmian held the poisonous dragon crystal in his hand. He immediately operated the sky-devouring secret skill and sent it into the vortex. The poisonous dragon crystal emitted a steady stream of highly toxic poison and eroded Chu Fengmian's body. Once he was eroded by the highly toxic poison, he would become a poisonous corpse like the president of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. Chu Fengmian already had a plan to deal with the corrosive poison. He injected all his spiritual power into the sky-devouring secret skill. The sky-devouring secret skill could devour everything in the world. Even the highly toxic poison in the poisonous dragon crystal could not resist it. In an instant, 90% of the highly toxic poison emitted from the poisonous dragon crystal was devoured by the sky-devouring secret skill. However, even though there was only 10% left, the poison in the poison dragon crystal was still extremely terrifying. It could easily kill a 9-tribulation ancient emperor. Chu Fengmian did not dare to relax. The tree of God guarded his body tightly. At the same time, his half-step immortal real body and 129,600 blood and flesh crystals gathered together tightly to resist the invasion of the highly toxic poison. Chu Fengmian's body took on the form of a sparkling and translucent jade. It was impervious to all poisons. No matter how the poison attacked Chu Fengmian's body, it was unable to invade his body. Instead, the highly toxic poison on the poisonous dragon crystal began to be removed little by little under the continuous devouring of the sky-devouring secret skill. Under the influence of the highly toxic poison, pure spiritual power appeared. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed when he saw this. Start devouring. Whoosh! A gust of sky-devouring power was immediately sent out. It turned into a sky-devouring python and drilled into the poisonous dragon crystal. Inside the poison dragon crystal, there wasn't even the slightest bit of poison. There was only incomparably pure spiritual energy. As Chu Fengmian began to activate it, a large amount of spiritual power was devoured by the sky-devouring python and transferred into Chu Fengmian's body. Great! Chu Fengmian activated the power of the battle dragon skill to the extreme. The ancient battle dragon phantom appeared behind Chu Fengmian again. The endless power brought by the sky-devouring python was injected into the ancient battle dragon phantom. Drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence began to condense again. Chu Fengmian officially began to break through to the Emperor realm. There were 129,900 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body. He only needed the last 600 drops. Boom! The spiritual energy condensed and began to transform continuously. Finally, a drop of ancient war dragon's blood essence was condensed. The bottleneck had been along was Fengmian Art of Hell. Come out's all. This was Chu Fengmian's only chance to break through to the Emperor realm, so he could not fail. Open of spheres saint spiritual saint. And was, of chi. Pills. Heaven was. Pills, at Fengmian's. At this moment, all of it was unleashed. Devour. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a hint of madness. He waved his hand and the countless jade bottles in the air suddenly shattered. One by one, the saint elixir pills flew out. Chu Fengmian opened his mouth, and in an instant, a dozen saint elixir pills fell into his mouth. These saint elixir pills fell into Chu Fengmian's mouth and immediately turned into pure spiritual energy that merged into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian activated Battle Dragon's secret art and began to devour the pure medicinal efficacies. Almost all of these saint pills were ancient saint pills. If a true emperor obtained them, he could easily step into the realm of Emperor Gu. But Chu Fengmian devoured them. The medicinal efficacies were all swept away. Chu Fengmian's body was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much medicinal efficacies there were, they would all be devoured. The consumption of spiritual power was unimaginable. It was a scene of a person breaking through to the Emperor realm. It was much more than the consumption of spiritual power when 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu broke through to 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even the wealth of a sect might not be enough to support Chu Fengmian's consumption. But in order to break through to the Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian was fully prepared. He knew in his heart that it was more difficult for Chu Fengmian to break through to the Emperor realm than it was for an ordinary Emperor Gu to break through to 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu. The more talented a genius was, the more difficult it was for them to break through. Countless geniuses in history were trapped by bottlenecks and failed in the end. But Chu Fengmian would never fail. Devour. Chu Fengmian opened his mouth and countless saint pills flew towards Chu Fengmian again. Dozens of pills, hundreds of pills. There were hundreds of saint pills in Chu Fengmian's empty ring. Now, Chu Fengmian had devoured hundreds of saint pills in one breath. The ancient war dragon phantom behind him began to solidify. Drops of ancient war dragon blood essence began to condense. Every time a drop of ancient war dragon blood essence was condensed, Chu Fengmian could feel his strength rising continuously. Moreover, Chu Fengmian's bloodline power began to approach perfection. His physical body, the half-step immortal true body, was also devouring the medicinal efficacies and began to transform. Even the divine tree had awakened and was devouring the medicinal efficacies. Everything in Chu Fengmian's body was transforming. The consumption of spiritual energy was much more than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Devour them all. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and dozens of Saint Elixir pills suddenly flew out. Each of these Saint Elixir pills contained a pure medicinal fragrance. Primitive Emperor Pill. A primitive Emperor Pill was enough to make a 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu break through to 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. One could imagine the strength of the medicinal efficacies contained in it. Previously, Chu Fengmian had obtained dozens of primitive Emperor Pills in the 9 Mystic Celestial Sovereigns cave mansion. Chu Fengmian gave a few to Qing Meng, Emperor Yan, and the others. Chu Fengmian had accumulated the remaining primitive Emperor Pills. He had been waiting for this moment. The dozens of primitive Emperor Pills were immediately devoured by Chu Fengmian. Every primitive Emperor Pill was devoured into Chu Fengmian's body and turned into pure medicinal efficacies. The medicinal efficacies of a single primitive Emperor Pill were enormous, let alone dozens of them being devoured at the same time. Even a 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu would be stuffed to death by such enormous medicinal efficacies. Chapter 1545. However, Chu Fengmian was not afraid at all. No matter how much medicinal efficacy there was, it would be devoured by the ancient war dragon's shadow. The ancient war dragon's shadow sensed the arrival of so much medicinal efficacy and increased the speed of its devouring. A steady stream of medicinal efficacy began to transform from Chu Fengmian's body and condensed into drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence. 100 drops, 200 drops, 300 drops. After devouring the medicinal efficacy of the primitive Emperor Elixir, Chu Fengmian's body condensed another 300 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence. He was only 300 drops away from the 129,600 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence. Chu Fengmian frowned at the number. In his original calculation, the medicinal efficacy of the primitive Emperor Elixir was enough to condense the last 600 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence. However, only 300 drops had been condensed. The spiritual power required to condense the last 600 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence was far beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. However, it was not just the ancient war dragon's blood essence that had exhausted the medicinal efficacy. The divine trees devouring in Chu Fengmian's flesh and blood crystal were also devouring the medicinal efficacy at the same time. All of them were undergoing a transformation and the medicinal efficacy was swept away separately. Although the remaining sacred elixir pills had decent medicinal efficacy, they were far from comparable to the medicinal efficacy of the primitive Emperor Elixir. Although they were constantly devouring and refining the medicinal efficacy, they could not keep up with the speed of Chu Fengmian's body's devouring. Fortunately, I was fully prepared this time. Otherwise, I might have failed to break through. Chu Fengmian looked at the poisonous dragon crystal and there was a hint of relief in his eyes. The poisonous dragon crystal was constantly being refined by the heaven-devouring secret skill. Currently, 80 to 90% of the poison had been refined. The poison that was attached to the poisonous dragon crystal had been stripped away. What was left was the extremely pure spiritual power that was crystallized. Devour. The heaven-devouring secret skill was activated and no longer dealt with the poison on the crystal. It started to devour the spiritual power in the poisonous dragon crystal. Only 10% of the poison was left and it could not invade Chu Fengmian's body at all. A large amount of spiritual power in the poisonous dragon crystal was devoured and poured into Chu Fengmian's body. The war dragon continued to turn the devoured spiritual power into the ancient war dragon's blood essence. The spiritual energy contained within the poison dragon crystal was much purer than the spiritual energy contained within the primitive Emperor pill. After all, in ancient times, this poison dragon crystal was used as a treasure to break through to the heaven realm. A large amount of spiritual energy surged into the ancient war dragon's shadow behind Chu Fengmian. Drops of blood essence condensed on it. Immediately, the power within Chu Fengmian's body rose steadily. At a glance, the ancient war dragon's illusory figure behind him had already completely solidified. It no longer looked like an illusion. Instead, it looked like a real primordial war dragon. Every dragon scale was vivid and lifelike. It was as if a real ancient era's battle dragon was about to come back to life. The flesh and blood crystals were also constantly transforming. Now, there was not a single trace of blood on the 129,600 flesh and blood crystals. It had completely broken away from the realm of the physical body and reached a unique level. It was like a spiritual weapon, but it had more spirituality than a spiritual weapon. This meant that the crystallized flesh and blood was transforming into a true immortal body. The sacred tree was also transforming. Now, the sacred tree in Chu Fengmian's body was 100 feet tall. Its roots were dense and its leaves were flourishing. On the crown of the sacred tree, one could even vaguely see the embryonic form of a fruit. 129,500 drops. The poison dragon crystal had shrunk from the size of a fist to the size of 4 fingers in the heaven-devouring secret skill. The spiritual energy within had been completely devoured by Chu Fengmian's body. Now, Chu Fengmian had already condensed 129,500 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence. He was only one step away from the limit of 129,600 drops. There were only 50 drops left. The spiritual energy of the poison dragon crystal was constantly being devoured. Chu Fengmian had also taken out all the sage elixirs and sage elixirs that could replenish spiritual energy in the empty ring. Chu Fengmian activated the power of the heaven-devouring secret skill to the extreme. It devoured everything and turned them into spiritual energy. 129,600 drops, success. Boom! The moment the last drop of ancient war dragon's blood essence was condensed, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt a drastic change in his strength. At this moment, Chu Fengmian's realm had officially stepped into the Emperor realm. The world energy condensed on Chu Fengmian's body. An ancient gate suddenly appeared above Chu Fengmian's head. Behind this ancient gate, there was an endless stream of world energy. The source world. Any cultivator who stepped into the Emperor realm would be able to summon the source world, which was enough to condense the world principles. This was an unchanging tradition since ancient times. Chu Fengmian had already triggered the appearance of the source world when he was in the sovereign realm. Therefore, he was no stranger to this source world. Chu Fengmian looked at the source world that appeared in the sky and suddenly frowned. The gate to the source world was tightly shut. Chu Fengmian could feel the terrifying amount of world energy behind the gate to the source world. However, it was firmly blocked by this gate. Could it be that I've already triggered the source world when I was in the sovereign realm, so it won't open this time? Chu Fengmian frowned. Triggering the source world would bring him incomparably great benefits. He had just broken through and needed a large amount of world energy to condense the world principles. However, this source world showed no signs of opening at all. Since you won't open it, I'll make you open it. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a fierce glint. A cultivator could only withstand the power of the source world once in their life. This was an unchanging rule since ancient times. However, Chu Fengmian was about to break this rule. He, Chu Fengmian, had never done things according to any rules. Suddenly, a sword condensed in Chu Fengmian's hand and blasted towards the gate to the source world. The power of this sword light was several times stronger than before Chu Fengmian stepped into the Emperor realm. As soon as the sword light shot out, it could destroy the world and directly bombarded the gate to the source world. A crack appeared on the entrance to the origin world from the sword light. Strands of the power of the world seeped out from the crack. The heavenly way will not tolerate this. Suddenly, a voice resounded from the sky above the origin world. Chapter 1546. The Sword of Judgment. The long sword condensed from golden lightning descended from the sky, locked onto Chu Fengmian, and slashed down. The golden lightning within it was the most terrifying thunder of judgment in the world. It was enough to destroy everything. Only those who violated the laws of the world would trigger the thunder of judgment. The sword of judgment was the most terrifying thunder of judgment. It was a long sword condensed from countless thunder of judgment. The sword of judgment would only appear in the thunder of tribulation of the celestial realm. Now that Chu Fengmian was bombarding the origin world, the sword of judgment suddenly condensed and slashed at him. A warrior could only open the origin world once. This was a rule since ancient times. No one could break the rules of the heavenly Tao. But today, Chu Fengmian wanted to break the rules and forcibly bombard the gate of the origin world. He violated the rules of the heavenly Tao and sent the sword of judgment to kill Chu Fengmian. You want to stop me? I've lived 2 lives. I've always defied the heavens. What's there to be afraid of? Chu Fengmian suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw the sword of judgment descending, there was no panic on his face. Instead, he sneered. In an instant, Chu Fengmian attacked. Several beams of sword qi bombarded the gate of the origin world. The entrance to the origin world was already covered in cracks, so it was immediately shattered by the strands of sword qi. Boom! The gate shattered. An endless stream of power of the world surged out like an ocean. Devour! Devour the heavens, devour the heavens. Chu Fengmian fully activated the power of the heaven-devouring beast's heart. The heaven-devouring secret technique powered by the heaven-devouring beast's heart was 10 times larger than the ordinary heaven-devouring secret technique. The heaven-devouring secret technique turned into a vortex that was 10 miles wide. It devoured the power of the world that surged out of the origin world. In an instant, 500 strands of the laws of the world were condensed in Chu Fengmian's body. The number of laws of the world in his body had reached 1,400. It was more than an ordinary 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu. As the power of the world was continuously devoured, beams of golden light condensed in Chu Fengmian's body. A large amount of power of the world condensed into the laws of the world and merged into Chu Fengmian's body. Extermination. At the same time, the sword of judgment descended. The sword of judgment carried the wrath of the heavenly Tao. In front of the sword of judgment, everyone was in danger. However, Chu Fengmian was not afraid in the slightest. He even shattered the origin world's gate in front of the judgment sword. It was an act of provocation. Rumble! The moment the sword of judgment arrived above Chu Fengmian's head, Chu Fengmian felt that every drop of his essence blood was locked onto by the sword of judgment. As soon as the sword of judgment came out, it was going to destroy everything that belonged to Chu Fengmian. It was going to make everything that belonged to Chu Fengmian evaporate in this thunderbolt. Power of the Tree of God, protect me. The sacred tree suddenly flew out from behind Chu Fengmian. Its lush branches and leaves withstood the power of lightning and devoured a large amount of it. At the same time, the 129,600 flesh and blood crystals in Chu Fengmian's body gathered together and formed a flawless barrier. The sword of judgment descended and bombarded Chu Fengmian's body. Its power was completely neutralized by the 129,600 flesh and blood crystals. Even the sword of judgment, known as the heavenly punishment, could not break the flesh and blood crystals. This result infuriated the sword of judgment once again. Rumble! Thunderbolts wreaked havoc. Every strike of the sword of judgment caused an intense explosion. Sword after sword bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, but Chu Fengmian guarded his body with all his might. He allowed the sword of judgment to bombard his body. Under the bombardment, Chu Fengmian's power also rose crazily. The origin world was opened and endless power of heaven and earth was emitted. It was all devoured by the sky-devouring secret technique. Although Chu Fengmian was resisting the sword of judgment, the laws of heaven and earth were condensing in his body every minute and every second. At this moment, the number of laws of heaven and earth in Chu Fengmian's body had reached 2,700. It was 3 times more than before the breakthrough. The condensation of the laws of heaven and earth also caused Chu Fengmian's realm to rise crazily. 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian reached the realm of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu in an instant. Stepping into the realm of 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu was enough to be called a peerless Emperor Gu. Now, Chu Fengmian had just stepped into the Emperor realm, but he had already stepped into the realm of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. It was 10 times or 100 times more difficult than stepping into the realm of 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Stepping into the realm of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu in one step was extremely rare even in legends. and the laws of heaven and earth in his body were even more than the laws of heaven and earth possessed by 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Even in terms of strength, Chu Fengmian was not inferior to 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The laws of heaven and earth in Chu Fengmian's body only stopped condensing when they reached 3,000. This was already the limit. The gate of the origin world was also slowly closing. 3,000 laws of heaven and earth, this was already the peak level of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. He had stepped into the Emperor realm, and his strength had increased by more than several times. All the previous accumulation and all the previous fortuitous encounters had now transformed into Chu Fengmian's strength. Chu Fengmian suddenly looked at the Sword of Judgment. Now that the origin world was over, it was time for Chu Fengmian to counterattack. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian made his move. The Titanic Divine Sword and the Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword slashed at the Sword of Judgment at the same time. The power of the Soaring Snake transformation shrouded Chu Fengmian's back. The power of fortune condensed on the sword's edge. The moment the two swords slashed out, a flame suddenly flew out from the sky above. 3 suns. The moment the 2 words were shouted, the flames suddenly burned and turned into flames that filled the sky, burning everything. In an instant, the Sword of Judgment was forced into the sea of fire. At the same time, 2 sword lights also slashed at the Sword of Judgment. There was a loud bang. The Sword of Judgment was smashed into pieces and suddenly turned into a sky full of thunderbolts that drifted in the sky. Seeing these golden thunderbolts, Chu Fengmian made a grabbing motion with his hand. Many thunderbolts were caught in Chu Fengmian's palm and immediately swallowed by Chu Fengmian. The thunderbolts were swallowed into Chu Fengmian's body and directly merged with the sword qi condensed from the power of fortune. The power of fortune originated from the heavenly tribulation and was of the same origin as the Sword of Judgment. The thunder of judgment had all turned into the power of the sword qi. He had broken through to the Emperor realm. Now, Chu Fengmian's every move contained surging power of heaven and earth and contained supreme majesty. Chapter 1547. The most obvious aspect of Emperor Gu's level was the surging power of heaven and earth contained in their every movement. After stepping into the ancient Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian finally understood why the ancient Emperor's power of heaven and earth was so strong. After reaching Emperor Gu's level, Chu Fengmian could sense that each of his movements was capable of manipulating the power of heaven and earth. True emperors could only use the power of heaven and earth when channeling the laws of heaven and earth. Emperor Gu, on the other hand, didn't need to use any special methods to gather the power of heaven and earth. Because of this, the gap between Emperor Gu and a true emperor was as vast as a ravine, impossible to cross. Now that Chu Fengmian had stepped into the realm of an 8 Tribulation ancient emperor, he was no longer at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation realm when fighting against an ancient emperor. Though Chu Fengmian had only recently reached the level of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, he was strong enough to crush a peak Emperor Gu as easily as crushing an ant. Even when facing a 9 Tribulation ancient emperor, Chu Fengmian was not afraid. Myriad Dragons Emperor, Emperor Gu of Jurisprudence. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with ferocity. The first thing he needed to do after reaching the level of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu was to take care of the Myriad Dragon Hall and the remnants of the Enforcement Hall. They didn't expect Chu Fengmian's power to grow so quickly. That Emperor Gu of Jurisprudence wanted to hunt him down as soon as he came out of seclusion. Chu Fengmian wanted to give him a nice surprise when he came out of seclusion. The Myriad Dragons Emperor almost killed Chu Fengmian earlier. If it wasn't for Yunzun's Jade Talisman and Wang Qianjue's appearance, Chu Fengmian would have been in grave danger. Chu Fengmian remembered this grudge. Now that Chu Fengmian had entered the 8 Tribulation ancient emperor realm, his strength had increased tremendously. It was time for Chu Fengmian to take revenge. The second level of the Dragon War art has appeared. While Chu Fengmian was deep in thought, the second level of the Dragon War art suddenly appeared in his mind. Chu Fengmian had finished cultivating the first level of the Dragon War art. All 129,600 drops of primordial battle dragon blood had been condensed. Chu Fengmian could be said to have the power of a dragon. However, his true strength had long since surpassed that of a primordial battle dragon. Thanks to his fortuitous encounters, he was even stronger than the dragon kings of the primordial battle dragon clan. The second level of the Dragon War art. The Dragon War art suddenly changed in Chu Fengmian Emperor's mind. Then, they transformed into 3 shining golden Dragon Emperor arts. The power of a Dragon Emperor. The limit of the second level of the Dragon War art can actually reach the strength of a Dragon Emperor. Chu Fengmian Emperor's levels. Chu chooses Emperor's Emperor, the Dragon War Arts Emperor, the 999s, the 9999999. This kind of cultivation method could not be found in the entire 9 regions. The person who created this kind of cultivation method by condensing dragon blood with his own strength was definitely a celestial realm existence. The Dragon War Arts Emperor's strength was even more exaggerated. The Dragon Emperor wasn't the Dragon Emperor of the Daluo star field, but the Dragon Emperor of the Primordial Era. In the Primordial Era, only a dragon who had stepped into the heavenly human realm was qualified to be called the Dragon Emperor. The Emperor of 10,000 Dragons of the 10,000 Dragons Hall was just a self-proclaimed emperor. He wasn't worthy of being called the real Dragon Emperor. When the Dragon War Arts Emperor's bloodline power reached the peak, it was enough to have the strength of a heavenly human realm expert. Moreover, this was only the second level of the Dragon War art. Chu Fengmian Emperor could faintly see that there was a third level of the Dragon War art. What kind of existence created this Dragon War art? The longer Chu Fengmian cultivated the Dragon War art, the more he could see the mysteries of the Dragon War art. It might seem easy to cultivate and forcefully condense the dragon blood, but if one really tried it, the dragon blood would take over their body and turn them into a real dragon. As for the Dragon War art, as long as one cultivated it normally, there wouldn't be such a problem. The weakest aspect of a martialist was the power of their bloodline. If it was purely a physical battle, martialists were far inferior to the demon god and devil race. However, martialists were also strong in their various martial techniques and spiritual artifacts. By relying on their spiritual artifacts, martialists could contend against the demon god and devil race. The appearance of the Dragon War art had broken the balance. A martialist's bloodline was enough to be on the same level as a demon god. In addition to their martial techniques and spiritual artifacts, they could directly surpass the demon god and devil race. This was also the root of Chu Fengmian's strength. Even if he didn't have any fortuitous encounters, he could be considered a genius just by relying on his bloodline. However, the Dragon War art had a restriction. Unless one was a divine vein martialist, they couldn't cultivate it. However, this was normal. Such a heaven-defying secret art without any restrictions had probably spread throughout the 9 territories, or even the Daluo Skystar field. Chu Fengmian had also inquired about the origin of the Dragon War art. In the Daluo Skystar field, Chu Fengmian couldn't find anything about the Dragon War art in the Holy Dragon Sealed domain. Now, except for Xing Xian, who gave the Dragon War art to Chu Fengmian, probably no one knew the origin of the Dragon War art. There are no more saint pills to continue cultivating. Chu Fengmian looked at his empty ring. It was now empty. A large number of saint pills that could assist in cultivation had been consumed by Chu Fengmian. It was the same for the poison dragon crystal. It had been completely consumed by Chu Fengmian. In this way, Chu Fengmian could only barely break through to the Emperor realm. If Chu Fengmian wanted to cultivate the second stage of the Dragon War art, he would have to obtain other treasures. Let's go! The Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce is not the only treasure on the Crimson Continent. In the history of the 9 territories, there are more than 100 forces that are not inferior to the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce. My strength will increase even more if I obtain these treasures. Chu Fengmian's face was full of confidence. After stepping into the Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian had fewer things to worry about. His current strength was enough to confront the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Even if he encountered the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, a half-step Heaven Realm Master, he could retreat unscathed. Chu Fengmian would also be more confident in fighting for the treasures in the End Ruins Heaven. At least if he encountered the young Emperor, Chu Fengmian would be able to retreat unscathed even if he couldn't defeat the young emperor. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and left the main hall. The poison dragon crystal was completely consumed by Chu Fengmian, and the poisonous fog in the heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce's ruins gradually dissipated. The various spirit artifacts, materials, and treasures in the main hall's treasury were also stored in Chu Fengmian's empty ring. Immediately after, his figure flashed and he left the heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 1548. The seven-colored radiance still shrouded the entire Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. Suddenly, the seven-colored radiance slowly opened and a figure walked out. Chu Fengmian left the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce with the seven-colored crystal in his hand. Now, Chu Fengmian had a faint smile on his face. This time, Chu Fengmian had gained a lot in the ruins of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. First, he had obtained the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, which was one of the top 100 cauldrons in the world. Then, he had obtained a lot of treasures from the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. Of course, the biggest gain for Chu Fengmian was that he had stepped into the Emperor realm. He had even stepped into the level of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. Now that Chu Fengmian had stepped into the realm of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu, his strength was no different from that of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The number of world principles in his body was even more than that of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. In the entire Daluo star field, Chu Fengmian could definitely be considered as one of the strongest. There's no one in this small world? The five spirits' sex holy sons have all left? Chu Fengmian scanned with his spiritual sense and suddenly realized that there was no one else's aura in this small world. Mu Lin, Yan Hanqi, and the others seemed to have left this small world. This made Chu Fengmian feel a little strange. Chu Fengmian had stepped into the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce and broken through to the next realm. It had only been about a day. With the injuries of the five spirits' sex holy sons, they might not be able to fully recover in a day. They should be recovering in this small world. But now, these five spirits' sex holy sons had all left and no one knew where they went. Could it be that something happened in the Crimson Continent? If nothing happened, these five spirits' sex holy sons would not have left in such a hurry. Chu Fengmian thought for a while and flew towards the exit of the small world. The treasures in this small world were the ruins of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. Now, all the treasures had been obtained. There was no point in staying in this small world. After Chu Fengmian's breakthrough, the speed of his escape light was also 3 to 4 times faster than before. Originally, Chu Fengmian possessed the bloodline of ancestor Jianwang, so his escape light was unbelievably fast. When he was a quasi-emperor, his escape light was already close to the level of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Now that Chu Fengmian had broken through, his speed was even more astonishing. In just a few breaths, Chu Fengmian had shuttled back and forth in this small world, reaching the edge of the small world. In a flash, Chu Fengmian left the small world and returned to the Crimson Continent. As soon as he set foot on the Crimson Continent, Chu Fengmian smelled a strong smell of blood. Was there a battle nearby? Chu Fengmian sniffed the air. The smell of blood was still incomparably clear. At most, a battle had taken place here 2 to 4 hours ago. The blood of martial artists and the blood of demons? Chu Fengmian could sense a bit of demonic intent in the smell of blood. It was actually the demon race. Could it be that the demon race had also made a move on the Crimson Continent? A large number of demon race had already sneaked into the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian discovered this when he had just returned to the 9 regions. However, compared to the martial artists of Daluo Star Field and Yanluo Star Field, the demon race was much more low-key. They had been lurking here and had not made a move. But now that there was blood of the demon race, it was most likely that the demon race had also made a move. The 9 regions originally had countless experts of various forces. Once the demon race made a move again, it would be even more troublesome. Just as Chu Fengmian was thinking, a blade suddenly flew out. Chu Fengmian, I didn't expect you to be hiding here. Die for me. 5 Elements Divine Blade. The blade contained the power of the 5 elements. It condensed together and complemented each other as it directly slashed toward Chu Fengmian. Sneak attack? Chu Fengmian instantly felt a bit of danger. His figure flashed, and he suddenly retreated. At the place where he had just been, a blade slashed down, creating a deep trench on the ground. This blade was definitely a killing move. If he took it head-on, Emperor Gu of the Eight Tribulations would definitely die. This was at least a martial artist of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu's strength. You dare to sneak attack me? Get out here! Chu Fengmian's gaze was incomparably cold. He glanced around and suddenly reached out his hand to grab the sky. In the sky, a figure was directly grabbed out. It was a young man. Although he was young, his strength had already reached that of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was comparable to the Saint of the Holy Dragon's secret dimension. Someone from the Avalon of Five Elements? Chu Fengmian saw the young man's clothes and could tell that he belonged to the Avalon of Five Elements. With his strength, he should be the Saint of the Avalon of Five Elements. Among the four major forces of Daluo Star Field, the Holy Dragon's secret dimension was not the only one with a holy land. The Avalon of Five Elements, Qilin Mountain, and Vast Ocean City also had similar holy lands. They also had secretly nurtured genius saints. The young man in front of him was one of the saints of the Avalon of Five Elements. His Five Elements technique had been cultivated to an extremely exquisite level. The Five Elements magical saber was not a physical body, but was condensed from the Five Elements spiritual energy. However, the real sharpness was much sharper than a real blade. You seem to have some ability to see my figure. No wonder the young master specially instructed me to kill you. The young man sneered as he looked at Chu Fengmian. Brat, are you going to surrender, or are you going to resist? If you surrender without a fight, you will suffer less physical pain. Surrender without a fight? Just based on the few of you trash? Chu Fengmian looked at the young man with disdain. There's no need to hide anymore. Come out. Then, Chu Fengmian looked at the sky. Not long after, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky. Two more figures walked out from the rift. Good eyesight. It seems that you have some ability to dare to destroy the Law Enforcement Hall and the 10,000 Dragon Hall. Another man came out. However, this man's arm did not seem to be made of flesh and blood. Instead, it had a texture like a tree. The physical body had turned into wood. This was a situation that would only occur when one cultivated wood-based techniques to the peak. In Daluo Star Field, there was only one powerhouse who had cultivated wood-based techniques to such a level. That powerhouse was Qilin Zhan. As for the last young man, he had surging water-type spiritual energy. This man was not a warrior, but a demon celestial. He was a demon celestial that had become a demon celestial. On his forehead, there were a few scales that proved his identity. Chapter 1549. In the entire Daluo Star Field, there was only one force that possessed an Eighth Tribulation Emperor Gu. Vast Ocean City. These three young men belonged to the three forces of Daluo Star Field. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but frown when he saw the three of them. If the three of them were saints from the Avalon of Five Elements, it was highly likely that the Avalon of Five Elements wanted to deal with Chu Fengmian. After all, Chu Fengmian had a deep grudge with the Avalon of Five Elements. Blood God Emperor Gu had been killed by Chu Fengmian, as well as Flame Prince and the others. Chu Fengmian had killed countless experts from the Avalon of Five Elements. These things could be hidden for a while, but not forever. It was normal for the Avalon of Five Elements to find out. However, the saints from Qilin Mountain and Vast Ocean City had also come to deal with Chu Fengmian. This was unusual. Chu Fengmian remembered that the Qilin Mountain disciples wanted the three forces to join forces to deal with the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension. Could it be that the three forces had already made their move? An icy glint flashed across Chu Fengmian's eyes. If the three factions were to attack, all the Sacred Dragon Secret Plane disciples within the Scarlet Red Continent would be in an extremely dangerous situation. Chu Fengmian could be said to be the most dazzling newcomer in the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension. Naturally, he would bear the brunt. Why are you guys attacking me? Are you going to ignore the rules? Chu Fengmian looked at the three of them and said calmly. The four major forces of Daluo Star Field had a treaty that forbade them from killing each other. Although this kind of thing was done a lot in the dark, no one dared to be so ostentatious on the surface. Rules? The three young men looked at each other with ridicule in their eyes. Chu Fengmian, do you still believe in these rules? It seems like you still don't know anything. From today onwards, the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension will disappear completely. There will be no more rules. The saint from the Avalon of Five Elements stared at Chu Fengmian and laughed sinisterly. However, the young Heaven Master is rather interested in you. I'll give you a chance now. Kneel down and follow me back to serve the young Heaven Master. Then, I'll let you join the Avalon of Five Elements and let you serve it. How about I spare your life? Hu Jing, are you planning to take all the benefits for yourself? The Qi Linshan Xingzi frowned when he heard what the five-element Xingzi had said. This fellow has many fortuitous encounters. I'm afraid it's not good for the Avalon of Five Elements to monopolize everything. The vast ocean capital's holy son said in a deep voice. Don't be anxious. Once this brat submits to the young Heaven Master, the young Heaven Master will naturally have the means to make this brat hand over his fortuitous encounter. At that time, the three of us will equally divide this brat's fortuitous encounter. Hu Jing sneered and looked at Chu Fengmian. Brat, have you thought it through? Are you going to live or die? Make your own decisions. Dead or alive? Of course, I will live and you will die. All of a sudden, a shocking aura was emitted from Chu Fengmian's body. The power of 129,600 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence erupted at this moment. The dragon power emerged behind Chu Fengmian and transformed into the image of an ancient battle dragon. The aura of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu immediately erupted. Emperor Gu? Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu? The moment they saw the realm of Chu Fengmian's aura, the three young men were taken aback. According to their understanding, Chu Fengmian was just a puny quasi-emperor, so they didn't put him in their eyes from the beginning. They didn't expect that in just a few days, Chu Fengmian's strength had officially stepped into the emperor realm and even reached the level of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. So what if he has stepped into the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu? With the three of us, we can even contend with a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, let alone an Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu who has just broken through. Hu Jing first glanced at Chu Fengmian, but then there was still some disdain in his eyes. They were all figures who had stepped into the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu for hundreds of years. They had a deep foundation and were far from what a newly broken through Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu could contend with. What's more, they were all holy sons of super forces. Although their fortuitous encounters weren't as amazing as Chu Fengmian's, they still had a lot. They also cultivated peerless secret arts, so naturally, they wouldn't be afraid of Chu Fengmian. Boy, I heard that you are a once-in-a-thousand-years genius in the Holy Dragon secret domain. Today, I will kill you. Hu Jing glanced at Chu Fengmian and instantly made his move. The Qilin Mountain Holy Sun and Blue Ocean Holy Sun had no intention of making a move. As holy sons, they were also peerless geniuses. In their opinion, Hu Jing alone was enough to deal with Chu Fengmian. Five Elements Condensation. Divine Light Annihilation. Hu Jing made his move. The power of the five elements condensed and intertwined in his palm, shrouding his back. The aura of his body rose steadily. In front of the fiery scene, five spiritual weapons flew out. These five spiritual weapons were the five elemental spiritual weapons. They formed a set and contained the power of the five elemental spiritual weapons. Each of the five elemental spiritual weapons was no weaker than an ordinary ancient spiritual weapon. When these five spirit artifacts were combined, they weren't inferior to the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword before its transformation. If one had the opportunity, these five spirit artifacts could be combined into one. It was very likely to transform into an extreme immoral weapon. It was a rare treasure. As soon as the five spirit artifacts appeared, Hu Jing's power became many times stronger. Suddenly, his palm moved. The 5 spirit artifacts combined into one and suddenly turned into a divine light. This divine light condensed the power of the 5 elements and even carried a bit of chaotic aura. The 5 elements in the world all originated from chaos. When Hu Jing made this move, the divine light swept across and turned into nothingness. It was annihilated. Return to chaos. This divine light broke through the air and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. First move. Seeing the arrival of this divine light, Chu Fengmian didn't even raise his head. He was calm and composed. A wave of spiritual energy condensed in Chu Fengmian's palm. He immediately made the first move of the primogenitor. Roar! A dragon roared. Now that Chu Fengmian's bloodline was complete, the power of the 9 moves of the primogenitor was countless times stronger. At this moment, Chu Fengmian's body suddenly turned into the appearance of primogenitor Jianwang. He blasted out a claw as if the real primogenitor Jianwang had attacked. The world shook. Boom! When the claw hit the divine light, the 5 elements divine light immediately stopped in midair. Then, Chu Fengmian exerted strength in his palm and crushed the 5 elements divine light. 3 ant-like brats want to deal with me? Today, the 3 of you will die here. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. The saints of the 3 major forces were cultivated with countless resources. There weren't many of them. Killing one more would weaken the strength of the 3 major forces. Chu Fengmian wouldn't show mercy to his enemies. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and stepped in front of Hu Jing. Suddenly, he clawed at Hu Jing's head. Chapter 1550. Chu Fengmian's strength was beyond Hu Jing's imagination. Before he could react, Chu Fengmian was already in front of him. He aimed at Hu Jing's head and clawed at it. Wood transforming vine. All of a sudden, a wooden vine whipped towards Chu Fengmian. The Saint of Qilin Mountain made his move. His wooden right hand transformed into a long vine and whipped at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's strength was beyond his imagination. If Chu Fengmian defeated Hu Jing, the consequences would be unimaginable. He couldn't help but make his move. This wooden vine was condensed from the purest wood's spiritual energy. It was much tougher than a heaven-grade spiritual artifact, and it was much easier to use than a spiritual artifact. The Saint of Qilin Mountain wanted to save Hu Jing, but the power of the wooden vine was also to kill Chu Fengmian in one move. He used an absolute killing move. Trident. The Saint of Blue Ocean also made his move. Spiritual energy began to condense in his palm and turned into a trident. The trident was the legendary supreme spiritual weapon of the monster clan in the Middle Sea. It was a famous extreme immoral weapon. The eyeball condensed by the Saint of Blue Ocean was only a shadow. But even though it was only a shadow, the trident contained an incomparably terrifying power. Its power surpassed that of an ordinary heaven-grade spiritual weapon. The 2 attacked at the same time. A vine and a halberd attacked Chu Fengmian. The 2 of them attacked together to force Chu Fengmian back. Then, they joined forces with Hu Jing to attack Chu Fengmian. However, Chu Fengmian let out a cold snort. He completely ignored the vine and halberd attacks. Not only did he not retreat, but he also moved closer to the fiery scene. He didn't intend to give Hu Jing any chance to struggle. He suddenly grabbed Hu Jing's head and activated the sky-devouring secret skill. Boom! A vortex swallowed Hu Jing's body. His essence blood was turned into pure spiritual energy and was devoured by Chu Fengmian. At the same time, the vine and halberd struck Chu Fengmian's body. However, Chu Fengmian's body remained motionless in midair. No matter how the vine and halberd attacked, Chu Fengmian didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. 129,600 flesh and blood crystals appeared on Chu Fengmian's body, perfectly blocking the strikes of the vine and halberd. Bang! Under the collision, he was completely unharmed. Chu Fengmian's physical body was tyrannical to begin with, not to mention that after Chu Fengmian stepped into the Emperor realm, it wasn't just his cultivation that had undergone a transformation. His physique in the divine tree had also undergone a transformation. As a result, Chu Fengmian's body was now unbelievably strong. Even the full-force attack of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu could be ignored. Chu Fengmian's body even emitted a burst of spiritual power. The wooden vine and the trident were immediately forced back. What kind of physical body is this? Using his physical body to resist the trident? How is this possible? Even a heaven-grade spirit artifact couldn't resist the power of the trident. The Blue Ocean Holy Sun stared at Chu Fengmian and shouted in disbelief. His figure retreated again and again. Watching Hu Jing die had already made him extremely shocked in his heart. His strength was comparable to Hu Jing's when he was still sowing seeds. Now that Hu Jing had died so easily at the hands of Chu Fengmian, he was extremely terrified. After a moment, the Blue Ocean Holy Sun and Blue Ocean Holy Sun turned around and fled without any suspense, turning into streaks of light that shot into the sky. The two of them didn't dare to fight Chu Fengmian anymore. Their full-force attacks were easily neutralized by Chu Fengmian's physical body. This kind of strength was far beyond what the two of them could resist. Want to escape? You think you can escape from me with just this little bit of light? Come back here. Chu Fengmian took a step forward, a fierce light flashing in his eyes. How could they escape after besieging Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian unleashed the power of Jianwang change and gathered it at the tip of his finger. He pointed it at the sky. The space within 100 miles was completely sealed. The 2 streaks of light also stopped in the air. Then, Chu Fengmian grabbed them with his palm and they were immediately pulled back by Chu Fengmian. A dragon's might enveloped the two of them, and they immediately knelt in front of Chu Fengmian. Tell me what's going on. Why are the 3 major forces working together to deal with the Holy Dragon's secret realm? Chu Fengmian looked at the two of them and said coldly. Chu Fengmian also wanted to know when and why the 3 major forces wanted to deal with the Holy Dragon's secret realm. The two of them were the Blue Ocean Holy Sun and Blue Ocean Holy Sun. Their status was noble, and they should know more. Bah, even if you kill me, you won't know. Anyway, you're not far from death. Your Holy Dragon sect will be completely destroyed, and your senior brothers and sisters will die. You'll also join them. The Blue Ocean Holy Sun roared crazily when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. You're courting death. Chu Fengmian's eyes were incomparably cold. He exerted force in his palm, and the Blue Ocean Holy Sun's body was compressed in front of Chu Fengmian. He was suppressed by a huge force, causing him to suffer unparalleled pain. Amidst a series of miserable shrieks, the body of the Qilin Mountain Holy Sun exploded. The heaven-devouring mystic technique immediately appeared and devoured all the blood essence. Although Chu Fengmian wanted to know some things, he had no reason to keep them if they didn't cooperate. Do you want to talk or die? Chu Fengmian looked at the Blue Ocean Holy Sun and said coldly. I'll talk. As long as you let me go, I'll tell you everything. The Blue Ocean Holy Sun hurriedly begged for mercy. You don't have the right to bargain with me. Chu Fengmian's eyes were still cold. He clenched his hand, and the Blue Ocean Holy Sun died in his palm. The Blue Ocean Holy Sun's blood essence was also devoured by Chu Fengmian. Although the 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm wasn't very useful to Chu Fengmian, it was enough to help Chu Fengmian consolidate his realm. Chu Fengmian had just broken through, and his realm wasn't stable yet. It just so happened that the 3 of them delivered their blood essence to help Chu Fengmian consolidate his realm. The moment the Blue Ocean Holy Sun's blood essence was devoured, Chu Fengmian grasped with his palm and grabbed a ray of golden light. This golden light was the Blue Ocean Holy Sun's memory. They weren't willing to speak, but Chu Fengmian could still find out after they died. Chu Fengmian's eyes were tightly shut as he read the memories of the Holy Sun of the Shanghai capital. He sat there for 5 minutes before he slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 1551. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes with a solemn expression. After reading the memories of the vast ocean chosen, Chu Fengmian realized that the current situation was worse than he had imagined. the three major forces had joined forces to deal with the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain. It wasn't something that happened overnight. They had been planning this for years, but had never found the opportunity. Now that the 9 regions had opened and were in chaos, the three major forces realized the opportunity and planned to wipe out the Chosen of the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain in one fell swoop. That wasn't all. The current situation of the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain was not only an external threat, but also an internal threat. According to the memories of the vast ocean Chosen. This time, the three major forces had joined forces with many Chosen of the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain. Many of the Chosen of the 6 Ultimates sect, Sacred Academy sect, and 5 Spirits sect were their targets of recruitment. Although it was unknown how many Chosen had been recruited, there were only a few internal threats that were more troublesome and difficult to deal with than the three major forces. After all, the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain had its own foundation. It wouldn't be easy for external forces to destroy it. He was afraid of internal conflicts. Now, Chu Fengmian was a little worried about the Chosen of the 5 Spirits sect. Now that Yan Hanshi and the others had left, it was most likely that they had encountered something. Once the Holy Son of the 5 Spirits sect was also annihilated by the three major forces, then Chu Fengmian would fall into a situation where he would be alone and without help. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had passed the news to Yan Hanshi in advance. Now, Yan Hanshi and the others should have made some preparations in advance and wouldn't be attacked suddenly. However, the three major forces hadn't started to deal with the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain yet. The Crimson Continent and the treasures of the entire returning ruined sky were still their early targets. However, because Chu Fengmian was too dazzling in the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain, the three major forces had already issued an order internally. Anyone who could capture or kill Chu Fengmian would be rewarded handsomely. Now that he had encountered the experts of the three major forces, Chu Fengmian had to be careful. Let's go and collect more treasures. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. In a flash, he soared into the sky and turned into a streak of light, flying towards the depths of the Crimson Continent. At the end of the day, there was only one thing that could be resolved, and that was strength. Only with enough strength could one resolve these problems. Now that Chu Fengmian had just made a breakthrough, he needed a large amount of treasures to stabilize his realm. Once he stabilized his realm, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by a few notches. Although Chu Fengmian had yet to truly fight with the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu after his breakthrough, Chu Fengmian now felt confident that he could put up a fight against the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. If Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to kill Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, or even reach the level of a half-step celestial being, Chu Fengmian would be able to resolve the conspiracy of the three major forces by himself. In the end, strength was what was needed. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes were meaningless. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered as he shuttled through the Crimson Continent. The treasures in the Crimson Continent had already begun to emerge. This time, a large number of treasures had emerged due to the upheaval of the 9 regions. The Crimson Continent was no exception. At a glance, the sky was filled with countless rays of light. Each ray of light represented the emergence of a treasure. Let's go! Chu Fengmian glanced at the nearest light. His figure flashed as he rushed over. With a glance, he saw a blood-red sacred medicine on the ground. On the blood-red color, there were some veins and patterns. Meridian blood grass, good stuff. Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up when he saw the blood-red sacred medicine. The Meridian blood grass was a sacred medicine with incomparably pure spiritual energy. The spiritual energy within it was mild and not suitable for cultivation. However, it was suitable for healing injuries and stabilizing one's realm. It was just right for Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and rushed towards the Meridian blood grass. He reached out his hand to take the Meridian blood grass. There's a sacred medicine. Suddenly, 3 rays of light came from afar and rushed over. When they saw Chu Fengmian taking the Meridian blood grass, a ray of saber light suddenly slashed towards Chu Fengmian's arm. They attacked directly without any words. In this Crimson Continent, snatching treasures was an extremely normal thing. Every treasure was stained with countless amounts of blood. When the three rays of light saw that Chu Fengmian was alone, they did not hesitate to attack and slash their sabers at Chu Fengmian. Die! Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. How dare they snatch the treasure from his hands? These three people were just courting death. They were just 7 calamities Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian could kill 8 calamities Emperor Gu as easily as squashing an ant, let alone a few 7 calamities Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian flipped his palm and transformed it into a dragon claw. He immediately slammed it down. The 3 rays of light that were attacking Chu Fengmian were immediately shattered. Then, the 3 bodies were mercilessly killed by the war dragon's claw. Devour. Chu Fengmian activated the sky-devouring secret technique and devoured all the essence and blood of the 3 people to stabilize his cultivation. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also took the meridian blood grass into his palm. Then, without any hesitation, he threw the meridian blood grass into his mouth. Inside Chu Fengmian's body, the sky-devouring secret skill was immediately activated and began to refine the medicinal efficacies of the meridian blood grass. The surging medicinal efficacies poured into Chu Fengmian's body and began to stabilize his cultivation. Although the meridian blood grass was only an ancient sacred medicine, it was indeed the best thing to stabilize one's cultivation. Thus, Chu Fengmian swallowed and refined it. Now, Chu Fengmian's strength had obviously become much more stable. This was the effect of the meridian blood grass. Emperor Gu, who had just broken through, would not be able to exert his full strength due to the instability of his strength. This was the case when breaking through a realm, especially when Chu Fengmian had broken through from the quasi-emperor realm to the 8 calamities Emperor Gu's cultivation. Breaking through 8 realms in one go, Chu Fengmian's cultivation was unstable. The meridian blood grass was very useful for stabilizing his cultivation. However, a single meridian blood grass was far from enough to completely stabilize Chu Fengmian's cultivation. Chu Fengmian's palm moved, and the spatial rings of the 3 warriors were immediately opened. Countless treasures fell into Chu Fengmian's eyes. These 3 cultivators seemed to have obtained a lot of treasures on the Crimson Continent. Chu Fengmian also saw some treasures that were useful for him to consolidate his realm. He took them out of his spatial ring and swallowed them with his devouring heaven secret technique. Chapter 1552. It was much faster for Chu Fengmian to obtain the treasures from the 3 warriors than to search for them himself. After devouring the treasures in the spatial rings of these 3 martialists, Chu Fengmian felt that his strength had clearly improved by a step. Rather than searching for treasures, he might as well kill other warriors. The martial artists in this crimson-red continent should have gained quite a bit. Since the other 3 forces had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Chu Fengmian might as well strike first and destroy their morale. He could also obtain the treasures from the Crimson Continent, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's do it. Chu Fengmian thought for a while and made up his mind. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, even if he encountered the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, he could easily retreat. It was extremely rare for the saints to reach the level of 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Most of them were warriors with the strength of 7 tribulations Emperor Gu and 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. If Chu Fengmian wanted to kill them, it wouldn't take much effort. The resources required to nurture an Emperor Gu were astronomical. Even though there were 4 forces in the Daluo star field, there weren't many Emperor Gu in each force. Chu Fengmian could only kill 1 Emperor Gu to reduce the strength of the 3 forces. Now that Chu Fengmian wanted to kill someone, he had an extremely convenient item. Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and a bronze mirror appeared in his palm. The God-spying mirror was the most valuable treasure of the Tiandao sect that Chu Fengmian had obtained from the Yan family. The God-spying mirror could detect the aura of warriors within 100 miles. The aura of a warrior was closely related to the cultivation technique they practiced. Chu Fengmian moved his palm and suddenly simulated the cultivation technique of the Avalon of 5 elements. He condensed an aura and injected it into the God-spying mirror. Chu Fengmian had already fought with the experts from the other 3 forces many times. He was very familiar with their cultivation techniques. Although he wasn't proficient, it was easy to simulate an aura. When the aura was injected into the God-spying mirror, a few shadows immediately appeared. Within a radius of 100 miles, there were 3 saints from the Avalon of 5 elements. All 3 of them had the strength of Emperor Gu and were currently traveling together in search of treasures. It is indeed effective. When Chu Fengmian saw the results, his face lit up with joy. Immediately, he injected the aura of the vast ocean realm and the Qi Linshan realm into the God-spying mirror. Several more figures appeared on the God-spying mirror. Although Chu Fengmian was a holy son of the Avalon of 5 elements, it was possible that he did not practice the techniques of the Avalon of 5 elements. However, Chu Fengmian's goal was not to capture all the holy sons of the 3 major powers in one go. After all, the Crimson Continent was huge. It was simply a fantasy for Chu Fengmian to capture all the holy sons of the 3 major forces in one fell swoop. Now, Chu Fengmian only needed to hunt a large number of them. Looking at the figures on the God-spying mirror, Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and flew towards the nearest figures. Not far away, on the Crimson Continent, 3 ancient martial art practitioners were traveling together. From their attire, it was obvious that they were from the same power, the Avalon of 5 elements. This Crimson Continent is indeed full of treasures. This time, I have obtained many sacred herbs. Most of them are from the Middle Ages, and there are even quite a number of ancient sacred herbs from the Antiquity era. If I take them out, I can sell them for a large sum of money. A holy son from the Avalon of 5 elements was holding an ancient sacred herb in his hand. His face lit up with joy as he spoke. We have struck it big this time. This is nothing. It is said that there are a few large-scale treasures on the Crimson Continent that are about to open. Those large-scale treasures are said to be caves left behind by celestial beings. The opportunities within are the real treasures. What we have obtained is nothing. Another holy son from the Avalon of 5 elements curled his lips and spoke. It's a pity that we are not qualified to fight for those large-scale treasures. Only the supreme elders of the Avalon of 5 elements are qualified to fight for those large-scale treasures. It's easier said than done to fight for large-scale treasures. It is said that several of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu have fallen in the past few days. With our strength, I'm afraid that we will be doomed if we go there. It's better for us to obtain some sacred herbs safely. Another holy son from the Avalon of 5 elements spoke. Oh yes, other than the large-scale treasures, do you know about the young Heaven Master's bounty? You mean? That little fellow called Chu Fengmian? Upon hearing about the young Heaven Master's bounty, the other 2 holy sons from the Avalon of 5 elements sneered. I don't know how that little fellow caught the young Heaven Master's attention. He actually placed a sky-high bounty on him. Whoever can kill that little fellow is really lucky. It is said that the little fellow is only an Emperor Gu. Why don't we go look for him? If we can find him and obtain the young Heaven Master's bounty, the 3 of us will be able to improve our strength and have the opportunity to challenge the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Upon hearing that they could challenge the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, the other 2 holy sons from the Avalon of 5 elements were extremely excited. The 3 of them were all 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Although there was only a difference of 1 realm between an 8 tribulations Emperor Gu and a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, their statuses were completely different. In the Avalon of 5 elements, the highest rank a holy son could reach was an 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Once he stepped into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, he would no longer be a holy son but a supreme elder. However, it was easier said than done to break through to the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Among the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, there might not even be one who could step into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. In addition to exceptional talent, a large amount of resources was also required. Although the 3 of them had obtained a large amount of treasures from the Crimson Continent, they were still far from being able to challenge the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. It's easier said than done to find that brat. He's just a puny quasi-emperor. Maybe he's already dead. A holy son from the Avalon of 5 elements shook his head. Ancient emperors and true emperors were everywhere in Crimson Continent. A quasi-emperor would have died a long time ago if they were to come to Crimson Continent. You want to find me? Very well, I'll give you a chance. Suddenly, a voice descended from the sky. Following that, a figure appeared in front of the three holy sons. Who is it? When they saw the figure appear without a sound, the three of them revealed a cautious expression. When they saw the appearance of the figure, their eyes were suddenly filled with incomparable excitement as they spoke at the same time. Chu Fengmian? A holy son from the Avalon of Five Elements stared at Chu Fengmian excitedly. Chu Fengmian, you still dare to show yourself? Looks like the heavens have blessed us with great fortune this time. It's time to strike it rich. Kill him before he escapes. The other holy son from the Avalon of Five Elements didn't hesitate and directly grabbed Chu Fengmian. Chapter 1553. The young heaven master of the Avalon of Five Elements had set a sky-high bounty on Chu Fengmian's head. He was like a moving treasure. Whoever could kill Chu Fengmian would obtain benefits no less than obtaining a large treasure trove. The holy son of the Avalon of Five Elements had heard about Chu Fengmian and knew that Chu Fengmian had many tricks up his sleeves. Hence, he did not waste time talking nonsense with Chu Fengmian and attacked him directly. His first move was an absolute killing move. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian in his hands. A palm covered the sky and covered Chu Fengmian. In an instant, it bombarded Chu Fengmian's head. You want to kill me with such strength? Chu Fengmian sneered. He did not move, but two sword lights shot out from the world-edge sword case on his back. They soared into the sky and slashed the palm. Ah! A miserable scream rang out. The palm of the holy son of the Five Spirits sect was chopped off. So strong? Emperor Gu of the Eight Tribulations. He has reached the level of Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu? The other two holy sons of the Five Spirits sect stared at Chu Fengmian's attack. Their expressions changed. They looked at each other and attacked together without any words. Boom! Spiritual energy filled the sky and bombarded Chu Fengmian. The three of them joined forces and condensed their spiritual energy into a huge formation. It contained a destructive force and bombarded Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's face was extremely calm. With a thought, several sword lights soared into the sky and hit the formation. Streaks of sword light recklessly destroyed the formation eye of the formation, shattering the formation. The aftermath of the formation's destruction forced the three holy sons of the Avalon of Five Elements to retreat. The power of the aftermath injured them, causing them to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood essence. This man's strength is too terrifying. Let's go. This man is not someone we can deal with. Let's go and tell the young heaven master about him. The three of them were forced to retreat. They knew that it was impossible for them to deal with Chu Fengmian with their strength. The moment they were forced back, the three of them turned around, turned into streaks of light, and fled into the distance. No need to escape. All of you will die here. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. No one could escape from his hands. Several sword lights suddenly flew out and caught up with the three of them at lightning speed. As the sword lights flashed, the three's bodies were penetrated by the sword chi. Chu Fengmian then unleashed the sky-devouring secret technique. A vortex devoured all of their blood essence and converted it into Chu Fengmian's power. At the same time, their empty rings landed in Chu Fengmian's hands. The strength of these three people wasn't bad, so they had gained a lot in the Scarlet Red Continent, 7 ancient sacred elixirs. 7 of ancient SSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSS SSSS. 3's S, them's, to is. SSS. SSSS. S, SSS. Was. Ancientses. Ancients. Many other ancients. Ancients. It was hard to say if they existed in this era. It was easier said than done to obtain them. Therefore, Chu Fengmian had no intention of refining them into elixirs. Instead, he devoured them to improve his. In the Crimson Continent, strength was the most fundamental thing. With strength, one would never be short of treasures. Moreover, the three major forces had begun to target Chu Fengmian. He had to make the best use of his time to improve his strength. Large-scale treasure. Celestials. It's probably a treasure similar to the 9 mystic celestial venerables cave. Chu Fengmian remembered the large treasures that the three of them had talked about. Chu Fengmian also extracted the memories of the 3 saints of the Avalon of 5 elements. It was said that the supreme elders of the Avalon of 5 elements had already obtained 2 of the. One was the ruler of Qianquan country, and the other was the Misty Island Old Man's Cave. These 2 supreme elders were famous experts in the history of the 9 regions. They were both in the celestial realm. In the history of the 9 regions, there had been quite a number of celestial realm elites. Now, the large treasures that had been opened on the Crimson Continent were far more than just these 2. If Chu Fengmian had the chance to obtain one of the, it would definitely be a great harvest. It would allow Chu Fengmian's strength to skyrocket. For example, Chu Fengmian had obtained the 9 mystic celestial venerables cave. He had obtained the 9 mystic celestial venerables cave. In addition, Chu Fengmian had obtained the Dragon Emperor Yan's cave. He had also obtained the ancestral dragon's supreme sword. However, it was not easy to obtain the. Most of the experts who went to fight for it were at the level of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. The returning ruined sky had dispatched many supreme elders of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's level, but they had only managed to snatch 2 of the. It was enough to show how difficult it was to obtain. Chu Fengmian could at most give it a try. He was not completely confident. I'll hunt down the other 3 forces Emperor Gu first. I'll try my luck when the Crimson Continent's treasures were all opened suddenly. If they were not opened, even the strongest martial artist would not be qualified to enter. Just like the Tianyuan Trade Union's treasures, only those who had obtained the Rainbow Crystal were qualified to enter. Of course, being qualified to enter did not mean that one could obtain the treasures. Only those who had sufficient strength were qualified to obtain the treasures. Chu Fengmian opened the Divine Realm and saw the traces of several Emperor Gu. His figure flashed and he flew over. The 7 tribulations Emperor Gu and the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu had no chance of escaping from Chu Fengmian. In the short span of an hour, all the ancient emperors of the 3 major forces within 100 li radius had been slain by Chu Fengmian. Large amounts of blood essence were also devoured by Chu Fengmian and turned into Chu Fengmian's strength to consolidate his realm. However, the greatest gain was the treasures obtained from these Emperor Gu's spatial rings. Many of these ancient emperors had collected large amounts of treasures from the Crimson Continent, and now they were all in Chu Fengmian's hands. These treasures were definitely enough to establish a colossus. Even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu would not be able to resist snatching many of these treasures. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Divine Realm and saw that there were no more targets. It's time to go to the next place. Chu Fengmian was just about to activate the conveyance light when the earth suddenly shook. Chapter 1554. Not far from Chu Fengmian, 7-colored auspicious clouds suddenly condensed together with a 7-colored radiance. Behind the 7-colored radiance, an illusory image of an ancient palace appeared. The palace was illusory and real at the same time. A worldly anomaly. Even from a few hundred miles away, one could clearly see the worldly anomaly. A large treasure trove had appeared. Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up with joy. A large treasure trove had appeared and it was not far from him. Most of the large treasures on the Crimson Continent were former celestial beings' abodes or the remains of great powers that dominated the 9 domains for an era. Either way, it would be a great opportunity for Chu Fengmian to obtain it. Ancient sacred medicines and materials were not considered to be treasures on the Crimson Continent. They were only the tip of the iceberg. These large treasures were the real opportunities. A large treasure trove has appeared. Quick, inform the sect. Let's go and try our luck. Who knows, the treasure trove might be ours. A large treasure trove will most likely contain a celestial being's treasure. Our treasure trove has arrived. On this crimson-red continent, there were countless powerhouses from countless starfields and forces gathered here. Upon seeing the appearance of this large treasure trove, streaks of light immediately rushed over, intending to be the first to seize the opportunity. Every large treasure trove was open in a different way. Some required a token to enter, while others were open to everyone. Whoever arrived first would get to enter. Thus, countless cultivators pushed their speed to the limit and rushed over. Emperor Gu, true emperors, and even some quasi-emperors wanted to try their luck. Let's go! Chu Fengmian did not hesitate and turned into a streak of light that flew towards the seven-colored radiance. The large treasure trove was only about 10 miles away from Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian could see the hidden palace behind the seven-colored radiance. Chu Fengmian's escape light was astonishingly fast. In an instant, he had surpassed countless warriors and arrived in front of the seven-colored light. At the bottom of the seven-colored light, an ancient bronze door suddenly appeared. The ancient bronze door was tightly shut. However, the runes on it were slowly being awakened. The moment these runes were awakened would be the moment this large treasure trove was opened. I wonder which expert of the 9 zones left this behind. Chu Fengmian looked at the seven-colored light, trying to figure out what the blurry palace behind him was. However, Chu Fengmian couldn't recognize it just by looking at the shadow behind the seven-colored light. The history of the 9 regions was extremely long. There were many ancient books that recorded stories from hundreds of thousands of years ago. There were many famous experts listed in the ancient books of the 9 domains. Chu Fengmian was familiar with the ancient books of the 9 domains. However, it was far too difficult to see what was going on just by looking at the illusory image of the palace. Many people have already arrived. Chu Fengmian glanced around and saw that there were already more than a dozen martial artists gathered around. Most of them were Emperor Gu or true emperors. Among them, the strongest 2 were 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Now, they were all standing far away, hiding in the surrounding space. Since the treasure trove wasn't open, there was naturally no need to fight for it. They only needed to occupy a good position. Once the treasure trove was open, they would be able to take the initiative and be one step ahead. There weren't any martial artists from the 3 major forces. Within 100 miles, the 3 major forces Emperor Gu had all been killed by Chu Fengmian. Therefore, the martial artists here didn't belong to the 3 major forces. Many of them came from other continents or other forces in the Daluo star field. Yan Mo, Yan Wufeng, where do you think you're going? Hand over the Crossing Calamity sacred leaf. Otherwise, no one will be able to save you even if you run to the ends of the world. Boom! Suddenly, 2 rays of light flew over. These 2 rays of light were 2 young men. They didn't look old, but their strength had already reached the 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm. They could be said to be little geniuses, enough to be promoted to Holy Sun in the Sacred Dragon's secret realm. Now, these 2 young men were fleeing all the way. They seemed to be in a panic and didn't know where to go, so they flew over. Behind them, the 5 cultivators were also activating their escape lights as they chased after them frantically. These 5 martial artists were at the peak of the 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm. Their bodies were filled with the smell of blood and had the aura of a demonic cultivation technique. However, it wasn't a demonic cultivation technique that belonged to the 6 demon sects, but came from other forces. The demonic cultivation technique didn't only exist in the 9 domains. There were also demonic sects in many continents in the Daluo star field. However, the demonic cultivation technique wasn't considered strong in the Daluo star field. It was said that in some other star fields, the demonic cultivation technique reigned supreme. On the contrary, there were very few martial artists. Many people's expressions changed drastically when they saw the 5 cultivators chasing after them in a blood-red escape light. It's the Blood Tiger 5 Sons. Who is being targeted by these ferocious people? The faces of the martial artists changed drastically as they hurriedly retreated, afraid that they would provoke these 5 martial artists. However, there was a martialist who did not react in time. Before he could leave, he happened to stand in front of the Blood Tiger 5 Sons. Those who block our path shall die. The leader of the Blood Tiger 5 Sons snorted and slapped a 5 Tribulation True Emperor to death. He then opened his mouth and swallowed a mouthful of blood essence. Then, the light continued to chase after the 2 young men. These 2 are cultivation techniques from the Yan continent? Could they be martial artists from the Tanzhou continent? Chu Fengmian didn't care about the Blood Tiger 5 Sons. Instead, he looked at the 2 young men being chased. Chu Fengmian felt that their cultivation techniques were somewhat familiar. They were very similar to the Yan Emperor's cultivation technique. It seemed that they were martial artists from the Yan continent. The Yan continent was only a 6th-ranked continent and there weren't many Emperor Gu. Judging from their cultivation techniques, they were most likely related to the Yan Emperor. It was highly possible that they were his disciples. At this moment, these 2 were being pushed to their limits by the Blood Tiger 5 Sons. There were many injuries on their bodies. Right now, they were forcefully channeling their escape light in order to escape. However, there would be a day when they would reach their limits. Without anyone helping them, they would definitely die in the hands of the Blood Tiger 5 Sons. It seemed that the Blood Tiger's 5 Sons were about to catch up with the 2 of them. Chapter 1555. These 2 are related to the Yan Emperor. Since we've encountered them, we can't let them die in vain. The Yan Emperor was one of the few powerhouses in the Daluo star field that Chu Fengmian had a good relationship with. Now, he was being pursued by the Yanzhou continent. Chu Fengmian had no reason to sit back and do nothing. What should we do? Do we really have to hand over the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf? The young Emperor Gu, Yan Mo, said with a pale face as he stared at the Blood Tiger 5 Scions that were chasing after them. He knew that it was meaningless for them to continue running. Sooner or later, they would catch up with the Blood Tiger 5 Scions. The strength of the Blood Tiger's 5 Sons was supposed to surpass the 2 of them. Furthermore, the 2 of them had sustained significant injuries. Under the continuous pursuit, the spiritual power of the 2 of them had been almost exhausted, and now they were about to enter a desperate situation. If we hand over the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf, the Blood Tiger 5 Scions won't let us go. One of them, Yan Wufeng, looked at the Blood Tiger 5 Scions with a resolute look in his eyes. Even if we have to destroy the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf, we can't let it fall into the hands of these bastards. The Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf? The 2 of them are lucky, but it's a pity that it's a disaster. Hearing the name of the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf, Chu Fengmian understood why the Blood Tiger 5 Scions were chasing after the 2 from the Yanzhou continent. The Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf was one of the famous ancient sacred herbs in history. It was ranked as an ancient sacred herb, but in terms of value, it was more precious than an ancient sacred herb. According to legend, there was a divine tree called the Crossing Calamity Divine Tree. The Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf was a tender leaf from the Crossing Calamity Divine Tree, and only 3 of them would appear every 100 years. Every appearance of the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf was enough to attract a large number of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu and even half-step Celestial Realm powerhouses to fight for it. The Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf couldn't increase one's strength or heal injuries, but it had a unique effect that only the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf had. It could weaken the power of the heavenly tribulation. The name Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf came from this. Once consumed, the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf would weaken the power of the next heavenly tribulation. It was enough to reduce the power of the heavenly tribulation of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu by half. It could be said that as long as an 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu obtained one of these calamity-traversing sacred leaves, it would not be difficult for him to break through to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. It was said that the strongest tribulation thunder of an Emperor Realm Master would be easily resolved by this Crossing Disaster Divine Leaf. Of course, it could only weaken the power of the heavenly tribulation of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, and it was not that precious. The most terrifying thing about the Crossing Calamity Sacred Leaf was that it could even weaken the heavenly tribulation of the Celestial Realm, which was known as the Death Calamity. Although the power could only be weakened by 10% at most, for those who were trying to break through to the Celestial Realm, increasing their strength by 10% was more difficult than ascending to the heavens. Even if they consumed a large number of ancient sacred medicines, they would not be able to increase their strength by 10%. However, this crossing calamity sacred leaf was enough to weaken the death calamity of the celestial realm by 10%, which was already extremely heaven-defying. Therefore, for any master who wanted to break through to the celestial realm, this crossing calamity sacred leaf was an absolute treasure, and there was no reason not to fight for it. In this era, there were not many people who knew about the crossing calamity sacred leaf. Otherwise, many of the onlookers would have attacked the two from the Yan province at all costs to snatch this crossing calamity sacred leaf. The Blood Tiger 5 sons recognized the value of the crossing calamity sacred leaf, and they were chasing after the two from the Yan province just to get their hands on this crossing calamity sacred leaf. Even if this crossing calamity sacred leaf was useless to them, once they sold it, they would be able to obtain a huge amount of wealth, enough for them to break through to the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Of course, the Blood Tiger 5 sons would not give up on such a rare opportunity, and they chased after them all the way. Looking at the approaching Blood Tiger 5 sons, Yan Wufeng's eyes became colder and colder. Burn the principles of heaven and earth, and fight with them. If worse comes to worst, I'll self-destruct. I can't let these bastards get any benefits. Yan Wufeng's words revealed his decisiveness. This kid has a firm mind. Chu Fengmian nodded as he watched the conversation between the two from afar. Yan Wufeng's character was the kind of character that would make him a great master. He would rather die than submit, and he immediately made a decision. If he gave this guy a chance with his state of mind, he might become the next Yan Emperor in the future. At this moment, the Blood Tiger 5 sons had already caught up to them. The 5 of them stood in 5 different corners. Each of them was connected by a bloodline, and the 5 of them were the eye of the formation, forming a huge formation. Yan Imo and Yan Wufeng were trapped within. Hand over the crossing calamity sacred leaf. Hand it over, and we 5 brothers will let the 2 of you die a quick death. The eldest brother of the Blood Tiger 5 sons stepped forward and stared at Yan Wufeng coldly. Obviously, the crossing calamity sacred leaf was in Yan Wufeng's hands. Dream on. Yan Wufeng's cold voice was squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth. Even if we self-destruct, we won't let you get any benefits. Go to hell. Rumble. Suddenly, the spiritual energy in Yan Wufeng's body began to go berserk. The self-destruction of an Emperor Gu was enough to cause an earth-shattering explosion. Experts who had become Emperor Gu had gone through untold hardships in exchange for their lifespan. Therefore, there were very few people who would rather self-destruct. Seeing Yan Wufeng's self-destruction, the Blood Tiger 5 sons were not worried at all. Instead, they sneered. Self-destruct? You want to self-destruct in the hands of the Blood Tiger 5 sons? Looks like you haven't heard of our Blood Tiger formation. Blood Tiger formation. Suppress essence blood. The Blood Tiger 5 sons suddenly attacked. The Blood Tiger formation began to rotate slowly, and a wave of spiritual energy enveloped Yan Wufeng's body. Yan Wufeng's raging spiritual energy began to slowly calm down under the cover of this spiritual energy. Even his blood essence was suppressed. The Blood Tiger formation had the ability to suppress essence blood. Once his essence blood was suppressed, he would not have the chance to self-destruct even if he wanted to. Seeing that his self-destruction had failed, Yan Wufeng's face turned ghastly pale. His final move was useless. Go to hell. The youngest of the Blood Tiger 5 sons, the red-robed man, suddenly took a step forward and attacked Yan Wufeng with his palm. At this moment, something strange happened. A sword light suddenly appeared in the air, broke through space, and slashed at the red-robed man. Chapter 1556. The sword light tore through the space and slashed toward the red-robed man. The speed was so fast that the red-robed man didn't even have time to react. The sword light instantly pierced the red-robed man's chest. Blood spurted out. The red-robed man's body shattered and turned into a cloud of blood mist. With one sword strike, the red-robed man immediately fell. Little 5. Who is it? Kill him. Seeing the red-robed man die, the rest of the Blood Tiger 5's sons looked in the direction of Chu Fengmian's attack. When they saw Chu Fengmian, they immediately attacked. How dare an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu meddle in the affairs of the Blood Tiger 5 sons? Go to hell. Suddenly, the other 4 people joined forces at the same time. Clusters of blood gushed out and immediately turned into a blood tiger, rushing toward Chu Fengmian. The blood tiger was formed by the 4 of them. Its strength was close to the peak of the 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. This was the unique skill of the Blood Tiger 5 sons. Although the Blood Tiger 5 sons were 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu, ordinary 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu didn't dare to fight with them. Not to mention that the Blood Tiger 5 sons were not 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even if they were 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian wouldn't put them in his eyes. Chu Fengmian stood in place as he watched the Blood Tiger approach. His expression was incomparably relaxed. Suddenly, he waved his hand and directly grabbed the Blood Tiger. The ferocious Blood Tiger was shrouded by Chu Fengmian's claw and froze in the air. Then, Chu Fengmian exerted his strength. This Blood Tiger was withstanding a great amount of power and was immediately torn apart. Soon after, Chu Fengmian exerted force in his palm and blasted out a palm strike. The other 4 of the Blood Tiger 5 were hit in the chest. Under the power of this palm strike, they were killed on the spot. They exploded in the air and turned into clouds of blood mist. Chu Fengmian grabbed them and the blood essence fell into his palm and turned into 4 blood pills. When Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng saw this, their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. They were almost scared to death. The Blood Tiger's 5 sons were notorious figures. Their strength was unquestionable. Although there were only 4 of them left, they were strong enough to fight against the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Even the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu would have to expend some effort to defeat the Blood Tiger 5 sons. But now, in front of Chu Fengmian, they were all killed with a wave of his hand. Looking at Chu Fengmian, who was even younger than them, standing in front of them, Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were extremely shocked. Both of them were ancient emperors as well. Naturally, they could tell that Chu Fengmian was younger than them. The Blood Tiger 5 sons died just like that? Who is this person? He killed the Blood Tiger's 5 sons in one move. This kind of strength is simply standing at the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He's so young. Which force is he from? Not only the 2 from the Yanzhou mainland, but the other onlookers were also amazed when they saw Chu Fengmian kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons in one move. With this kind of strength, he could not be a nobody. Chu Fengmian. This person is Chu Fengmian from the Holy Dragon sect. Suddenly, one of the Emperor Gu looked at Chu Fengmian, as if he recognized Chu Fengmian's identity. Chu Fengmian? Many of the martial artists present were unfamiliar with this name. Many of them were usually in seclusion. They only woke up and came to the 9 zones when they heard the news that the 9 zones were open. But there were also some who knew Chu Fengmian's background. Chu Fengmian? Isn't this person a newcomer from the Holy Dragon sect? In just a few months, a newcomer has become so strong? How is this possible? The disciples of the Holy Dragon sect are all monsters. But the other disciples of the Holy Dragon sect are not as monstrous as him. His strength is not below Qing Meng's. Sounds of discussion could be heard everywhere. Senior, thank you for saving us. Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were stunned. After a while, they reacted and hurriedly thanked Chu Fengmian. No problem. Are the 2 of you from the Yanzhou continent? Chu Fengmian glanced at the 2 and asked. What's your relationship with the Yan Emperor? The 2 of us are from the Yanzhou continent. Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng looked at each other and said, Don't worry. The 2 of us are the Yan Emperor's disciples. The Yan Emperor is our master. Oh? The Yan Emperor's disciples? Then I didn't save the wrong people. Chu Fengmian could see that Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were definitely related to the Yan Emperor. Since they were the Yan Emperor's disciples, Chu Fengmian did not save the wrong people. He glanced at Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng. With a move of his palm, the 4 blood pills flew to them. Your master and I are good friends. Consider these 4 blood pills as a greeting gift. Seeing that Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were hesitating, Chu Fengmian said with a smile. Thank you, Senior Chu. The two of them knew Chu Fengmian's identity from the conversation just now. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, they did not hesitate and accepted the blood pills. The two of them had suffered serious injuries. The pure essence blood contained in the blood pills was just enough to help them recover from their injuries and make up for the lost essence blood. Where's the Yan Emperor? Chu Fengmian was about to ask about the Yan Emperor. Rumble. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy descended from the sky. It contained the rich power of heaven and earth. In the sky, it turned into blood clouds. A figure slowly appeared in the blood clouds. It was a middle-aged man. He was wearing a red robe with a blood dragon embroidered on it. He exuded a domineering and noble aura. He was definitely a big shot. It's the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. Let's retreat. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu is here. Chu Fengmian killed the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu must be here to avenge the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. Upon hearing the name of the ancient Lord Bloody Tiger, the crowd that had retreated even further. No martialist dared to stay within a 10-mile radius. Clearly, the name of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was more frightening than the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. Who dares to kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons? The moment the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu arrived, he smelled the stench of blood in the air. His face was filled with anger. Blood pills? Suddenly, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu saw the blood pills in Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng's hands. The moment he saw them, he could not hold back his anger and exploded. He felt a familiar aura from the blood pills. Clearly, the Blood Tiger's 5 sons had been refined into blood pills. Die, you 2 ants. Chapter 1557. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was enraged when he saw that the Blood Tiger 5 sons had been refined into blood pills. He launched a palm strike at the 2 from the Yanzhou continent. Boom! Surging blood qi condensed on the palm strike. It was so overwhelming that it seemed as if everything in the world would be destroyed by this strike. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength is close to that of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The moment the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu made his move, the overwhelming aura caused everyone to gasp in surprise. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength had reached the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was only a step away from the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was invincible among the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. No one could defeat him unless he was faced with a genius like Little Emperor Yi or Little Emperor Ju. Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng had no way of resisting Shuahong's attack. Their spiritual energy was completely suppressed. They couldn't even draw out the slightest bit of energy to defend themselves. They couldn't resist an ordinary 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu, let alone the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, who was at the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. In the face of the enormous pressure, both of their faces were incomparably pale. At this moment, the pressure on their bodies suddenly disappeared. Chu Fengmian took a step forward and looked at the descending blood-red palm. He gathered spiritual energy in his palm and launched a palm strike. The palm strike was accompanied by the roar of dragons. It was as if the ancient dragon emperor had arrived. Rolling draconic aura appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Waves of spiritual energy turned into the shape of ancient dragons and circled around Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's aura was no weaker than the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's. Break! Chu Fengmian shouted. The power of his palm strike turned into the shadow of a giant dragon and slammed forward. It collided with the blood-red palm. The surging power shattered the blood-red palm into pieces. Not bad. When the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu saw Chu Fengmian make a move, his eyes were filled with astonishment. He could see that Chu Fengmian was also an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu, but he believed that he was already invincible among the 8 Tribulation Emperors. An ordinary 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu would be defeated in 3 moves if he fought with him. It would take a lot of effort to block one of his moves. But now, Chu Fengmian was doing it so easily. He had underestimated Chu Fengmian. No wonder you dared to kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. You do have some strength, but today, you will be buried with the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's eyes revealed a hint of ferocity. In an instant, a blood-red tiger appeared behind him. This blood-red tiger seemed to be the real body of Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu wasn't a martial artist, but a demon immortal. A demon immortal that was formed by a blood tiger. Although the ancient lord of the blood tiger had already condensed into a human body, he had still refined this blood tiger into an ultimate treasure spiritual weapon. When the blood tiger merged with the body of Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength had more than doubled. What? Wasn't that Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's full strength? At the sight of this, many people in the crowd were stunned. Their eyes widened and their jaws dropped. The aura of the ancient Lord Blood Tiger's attack had left many of them breathless. Such terrifying strength was only a part of Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength was still hidden. So what if you have the Dragon Clan's bloodline? My bloodline is nobler than the Dragon Clan's. The Dragon Clan is just my prey. Blood Tiger rips the dragon. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu stared at Chu Fengmian and shouted coldly. He suddenly struck out with his claw. The power of this claw tore the surrounding space apart. The power of this move was enough to easily kill an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even someone like Little Emperor Yi would have to retreat in the face of this claw. He didn't dare to take it head-on. Tearing a dragon? Prey? What a boastful tone. You're just a blood tiger, an ant. What a boastful tone. Hearing Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's words, Chu Fengmian sneered. Not to mention that Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was a peak 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even if he had stepped into the 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid. Spiritual energy gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian struck out with his palm. The power of this strike was completely different from before. 129,600 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence gathered in the center of his palm. The first move of the primogenitor. Now that Chu Fengmian's bloodline was pure, the power of the 9 moves of the primogenitor was countless times stronger. The power of a complete bloodline was completely different from that of a partial bloodline. Even if Chu Fengmian lacked a drop of ancient battle dragon blood essence, the power he could unleash would be completely different from now. With an incomplete bloodline, the Dragon Clan's martial techniques would also be flawed. This was unavoidable. Once the bloodline was complete, Chu Fengmian would possess the power of an entire ancient battle dragon. The 9 moves of the primogenitor would be no different from a real Dragon Clan's martial technique. This strike contained the true essence of the Dragon Clan's martial technique. Destroy. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. As he sneered, the power of the first move of the primogenitor swept across. The Blood Tiger Claw was destroyed in the air. It didn't even have the slightest resistance before it was destroyed in an instant. Immediately after, the power of the first move of the primogenitor swept across the horizon and targeted Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. How is this possible? What kind of power is this? Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was shocked. He believed that his power was already at the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He couldn't say that he was invincible. However, he was confident that even if he was facing a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, he would still have the ability to fight. However, in the face of Chu Fengmian's power, he felt that his power was like that of an ant. He didn't even have the power to resist. Die! Chu Fengmian glanced at Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. With this sentence, he announced Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's death sentence. No! Crack! The first move of the primogenitor swept across. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's spiritual energy barrier was extremely fragile in the face of the first move of the primogenitor. It immediately shattered. Bang! There was a loud bang. Everyone stared blankly. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu exploded in the air under the palm of the first move of the primogenitor. Blood splattered everywhere. He was a figure at the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. He even had the chance to challenge the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. But now, he was killed by Chu Fengmian so easily. Chapter 1558. The scene before them was even more shocking than when Chu Fengmian killed the Blood Tiger's 5 sons with a single move. Although there weren't many experts in the 9 domains who could kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons with a single move, there were still a few. However, killing the Blood Tiger's 5 sons would inevitably offend the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. Therefore, even though the Blood Tiger's 5 sons were arrogant and despotic, no one dared to kill them because of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. This was enough to prove the strength of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. In the Daluo star field, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was an incomparably veteran Emperor Gu. In particular, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu had always been a lone wolf. Even the 4 major forces of the Daluo star field did not dare to provoke the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. However, such a famous expert had been killed by Chu Fengmian as easily as chopping vegetables. This was simply beyond the knowledge of many people present. This is too terrifying. Chu Fengmian is so young. Could it be that he's going to become another Yunzun? Countless people thought of another terrifying figure in the Holy Dragon sect, Yunzun. Yunzun had made his debut at a young age. He was invincible and left behind an eternal legend. Even after countless years, people were still talking about the former Supreme Cloud with gusto. The current Chu Fengmian was exactly the same as the legend of Yunzun. No, even Yunzun wasn't as monstrous as he was back then. When he joined the Holy Dragon sect, it was said that he wasn't even a quasi-emperor. Now, in less than a year, he has grown to such a heaven-defying level. Emperor Gu, who used to be in the same generation as Yunzun, said softly. Could it be that this person has received a power inheritance? There's a unique power inheritance in the Holy Dragon secret realm. Once it's received, it's almost comparable to the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's strength. Another Emperor Gu said. Although the legacy of strength was also a secret in the Xinguang mystery ground, it wasn't much to the ancient emperor. Most of the Emperor Gu knew that there were power inheritances in some ancient forces. That's impossible. If this kid had received a power inheritance, there would have been news of it long ago. Furthermore, this person doesn't have the spiritual energy of others. It's impossible for him to have received a power inheritance. Emperor Gu, who had some understanding of power inheritance, shook his head and said, once one received the inheritance of power, one's body would definitely contain the power of the person who inherited the power. Little Emperor Yi, for example, would always have Yi Futian's power within him. Even after he'd received all of Yi Futian's power, he still couldn't erase Yi Futian's brand. This was the fate of power inheritance. However, Chu Fengmian didn't have the power of anyone else. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Chu Fengmian didn't receive any power inheritance. The fact that Chu Fengmian hadn't received any power inheritance meant that his current strength was obtained through his own fortuitous encounters and bitter cultivation. In less than a year, he had gone from being a quasi-emperor to having the strength to kill the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. Such strength could be said to be heaven-defying. Throughout history, there were countless monstrous geniuses who could not be compared to him. If this kid doesn't die prematurely, he'll definitely step into the celestial realm. Many Emperor Gu looked at Chu Fengmian. Their eyes flickered with all kinds of thoughts. Greed, jealousy, envy, worship. Countless gazes of all kinds looked over. Chu Fengmian completely ignored their gazes. Even if there were a few hostile gazes, Chu Fengmian didn't care. Since he'd already displayed his strength, he wasn't afraid of others spying on him. On the other hand, Chu Fengmian just happened to lack essence blood to consolidate his realm. It couldn't be better if someone came to throw their lives away. Chu Fengmian looked up at the sky. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, who'd been blown up in mid-air, was still trying to reconstruct his body. He was struggling to escape from Chu Fengmian's hands. But how could Chu Fengmian give him such a chance? Chu Fengmian gently pointed his finger. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's newly reconstructed body let out a blood-curdling scream and was blown up. Immediately after, Chu Fengmian activated the sky-devouring secret technique and began to devour the essence blood of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. The bloodline of a demon god was more precious than the bloodline of an ancient martial artist. Therefore, the power contained in the essence blood of a demon god surpassed that of an ancient martial artist's essence blood. Moreover, the strength of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was close to the level of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The essence blood of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was the most powerful among all the experts that Chu Fengmian had killed. The moment it was devoured, Chu Fengmian immediately felt an incomparably pure spiritual energy pouring into his body. This energy was scattered to every corner of Chu Fengmian's body and began to settle down, consolidating Chu Fengmian's realm. Great! Chu Fengmian suddenly opened his eyes. After devouring the essence blood of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian's realm had been completely consolidated. The feeling of weakness caused by the previous breakthrough was completely swept away. Now, Chu Fengmian's realm was incomparably stable and he could already break through to a higher level. Now that Chu Fengmian had reached the level of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu, he could break through to the peak of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. However, increasing one's strength in the Emperor realm was countless times more difficult than stepping down the life and death steps. It required a lot of resources. However, in the returning ruins heaven, in the Crimson Continent, the thing that Chu Fengmian lacked the least was treasures and resources. As long as he had the strength, Chu Fengmian could collect a large number of treasures and resources. Boom! At this moment, the seven-colored light in the sky suddenly became even more beautiful. For a moment, the earth shook and the mountains shook. It felt as if the universe had been turned upside down. The surrounding mountains were also shaking. All of this originated from the palace behind the seven-colored light. The large treasure trove is opened. It was unknown who had shouted. At the bottom of the seven-colored light, a crack suddenly appeared on the ancient bronze door. The door slowly opened, revealing a deep abyss. The large treasure trove. Charge! This treasure trove is mine. No one is allowed to snatch it from me. Get lost. Whoever dares to snatch it from me will die. Countless people rushed towards the ancient bronze door as if they had gone crazy. The opening of the large treasure trove was a great opportunity, enough to attract a large number of masters. Now, these people had just witnessed the scene of Chu Fengmian killing the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. The desire for power in their hearts became even more intense. The opening of the large treasure trove just happened to let out the desire in their hearts. The scene was incomparably crazy. For a moment, countless Emperor Gu attacked, bombarding the front of the ancient bronze door. Every move was a killing move, bombarding crazily to prevent others from entering. Chapter 1559. Under the joint attack of dozens of Emperor Gu, even an Eight Tribulation Emperor Gu would find it difficult to forcefully pass through. If one was caught in it, the slightest carelessness would lead to one's death. Looks like there's no key to open this large treasure trove. Chu Fengmian thought to himself as he looked at the opening of the treasure trove. The colorful light above had already disappeared. Many of the large treasures opened on the Crimson Continent required the key to obtain the right to compete for them. However, the treasure trove in front of him had already opened and everyone could enter. Under such circumstances, whoever entered first would have the greatest chance to obtain the treasure. Let's go! Chu Fengmian's figure flashed. After observing for a while, he rushed towards the entrance of the treasure trove without any hesitation. The moment Chu Fengmian rushed over, he was immediately shrouded by countless martial techniques. These warriors were now competing for the right to enter the treasure trove first. They would not let anyone pass. The moment Chu Fengmian rushed in, countless killing moves shrouded Chu Fengmian and bombarded him one after another. The power of the divine tree, bless me! Chu Fengmian shouted, and the shadow of the divine tree slowly condensed behind Chu Fengmian. All the killing moves that hit the shadow of the divine tree were immediately dissolved. Chu Fengmian's figure did not shrink back. He stared at the countless killing moves and rushed towards the entrance. Occasionally, a few martial techniques avoided the resistance of the divine tree. At the moment when they bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, a layer of flesh and blood crystals appeared on Chu Fengmian's body. A few martial techniques could not shake Chu Fengmian's body at all. In an instant, Chu Fengmian stepped into the bronze door. Oh no, someone has entered. Don't be in a stalemate here. Chase after him. Otherwise, none of us will get the treasure. Seeing Chu Fengmian rush into the bronze door, those warriors stopped being in a stalemate. They also knew that if they continued to be in a stalemate, they would only benefit Chu Fengmian. Countless warriors also rushed into the bronze door. A large treasure trove? Good stuff. Another large treasure trove has opened. Looks like I got here first. This treasure trove is mine. All of a sudden, a powerful aura descended from the skies. Following which, a figure rushed down. It was an old man. The moment he saw the gigantic treasure, his eyes were filled with incomparable excitement. A bunch of ants, get out of my way. Looking at the mess below, the old man suddenly attacked. With a wave of his hand, a punch that could shatter the heavens and shatter the earth shot out. Several Emperor Gu in front of him were killed on the spot. 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Retreat. 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu is coming. When the crowd saw the old man's attack, their expressions changed drastically. Many of them retreated one after another. In the current era, a half-step celestial realm expert was already extremely rare. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was an almost invincible figure who was extremely tyrannical. At least you know what's good for you. Seeing the crowd disperse, the old man stopped his killing. His figure flashed as he directly stepped into the bronze door. On the other side, Chu Fengmian had just stepped into the bronze door when he felt something else. After entering the bronze door, what appeared was not the palace that Chu Fengmian had seen from the outside. Instead, it was a bridge, a single bridge. Both sides of the bridge were filled with deep darkness. At the same time, Chu Fengmian felt an incomparably huge pressure the moment he stepped into the bridge. It was as if there were 2 huge mountains on his shoulders that were pressing down on Chu Fengmian. Although it was not much of an impact on Chu Fengmian's current strength, Chu Fengmian felt that the pressure on his body would become greater with every step he took. Is this the test of this large treasure trove? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. While he was thinking, his speed was constantly increasing. He was the first to step into the bronze door. Chu Fengmian must seize this opportunity. Faintly, Chu Fengmian sensed that the real treasure trove should be at the end of the bridge. The 129,600 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence on Chu Fengmian's body were all activated. In an instant, they transformed into the appearance of an ancient war dragon and rushed forward. The few warriors who had just followed Chu Fengmian into the bronze door were left far behind in an instant. The pressure here was enough to make it difficult for Emperor Gu to move. Many of the 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu who had just stepped into the bronze door could only retreat because they had no strength to walk more than a few steps. In order to obtain the treasure trove, both opportunities and strength were indispensable. Entering the bronze door was a test of opportunity. In order to obtain the real treasure trove, one had to rely on strength. Boom! Just as Chu Fengmian continued to move forward, a surge of heaven and earth power suddenly shrouded the bridge. An expert had arrived. This kind of heaven and earth power was enough to affect the entire bridge. Only the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could do this. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu has arrived. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed some coldness. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was his true opponent. Although there weren't that many 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu on the Crimson Continent, there were bound to be a few. In particular, the appearance of such a large treasure trove which could be seen clearly from hundreds of miles away would naturally attract the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. After this 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu arrived, he also activated his full strength and chased after Chu Fengmian. His speed wasn't any slower than Chu Fengmian's. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had entered the bronze door earlier than the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu and now had the upper hand. The Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu still had to spend some time to catch up with Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's figure slowed down. He suddenly noticed that a palace had appeared in front of him. This palace wasn't at the end of the bridge, but at the center of the bridge. It stood there, and the gate of this palace was now tightly shut. One could still see many formation patterns engraved on the surface. However, many of the formation patterns on the surface were already broken, perhaps due to the passage of time. The power of the formation on the surface was already less than 20 or 30% of its original power. Chu Fengmian sized it up. His figure flashed and directly arrived in front of this palace. He gathered spiritual energy in the palm of his hand and suddenly attacked with a dragon claw. Break! Crack! As the dragon claw swept across, the formation patterns on the surface were broken. A gap opened on the ancient gate, revealing the interior of the palace. Inside this palace, a tree branch half the height of a human lay on it. As the ancient gate opened, an incomparably pure vitality was emitted from it. Chapter 1560. The vitality was so pure that it was unimaginable. It was even purer than Emperor Gu's vitality. Emperor Gu's injuries could be completely healed if he devoured the vitality. Even a mortal without any spiritual energy could live for hundreds or thousands of years if he absorbed just a little of it. In Chu Fengmian's memory, there was only one thing that could have such a pure vitality. The Builder Tree branch. The Builder Tree. Legend had it that the divine tree that split the heavens and earth apart was the foundation that supported the heavens and earth. It was said that the innate divine beasts were born from the divine tree. The vitality contained in the Builder Tree could even give birth to innate divine beasts. Its vitality had reached an unimaginable level. As a result, after tens of millions of years, the vitality contained in the countless branches of the Builder Tree still reached a terrifying level. When Chu Fengmian was in the divine power realm, he had obtained a Builder Tree branch. It was also because of this that Chu Fengmian was able to snatch the sapling of the divine tree from the ancient desolate sect's divine tree secret realm. It could be said that Chu Fengmian's current physical strength was related to the Builder Tree branch that he had obtained in the past. The Builder Tree branch that Chu Fengmian had obtained back then was only 3 inches long. However, the Builder Tree branch in front of him was 100 times larger than the one that Chu Fengmian had obtained. The vitality contained in it had also reached an unimaginable level. If Emperor Gu had obtained it and integrated it into his body, he would be able to recover instantly no matter how serious his injuries were. He would not lose any strength. Now, there was also a divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body that was of the same origin as the Builder Tree branch. Chu Fengmian could clearly feel the desire of the divine tree in his body. Such a large Builder Tree branch was enough to transform the power of the divine tree once again. Tear it apart. The moment Chu Fengmian saw the Builder Tree branch, he attacked at the same time. He gathered spiritual energy and blasted out a dragon claw. The dragon claw bombarded the cracks that had just been created, causing the cracks to widen. The doors of the palace were completely shattered. Chu Fengmian also stepped into the palace and sensed the Builder Tree branch at a close distance. When the Builder Tree shattered, a large number of Builder Tree branches were left behind. However, ordinary Builder Tree branches were only about 3 inches long. A branch that was half a person's height was extremely rare. The more complete the branch was, the more powerful the power it contained. Absorb. Chu Fengmian was shocked for a moment. He immediately grabbed the Builder Tree branch and prepared to absorb it to avoid any undue delay. Perhaps it was because Chu Fengmian had the God Tree, but the World Tree branch didn't resist Chu Fengmian. It immediately acknowledged allegiance and was absorbed into Chu Fengmian's palm. But before Chu Fengmian could rejoice, he suddenly felt a sense of danger in his mind. In an instant, Chu Fengmian could only temporarily put down the Creation Tree branch. His body retreated continuously, leaving behind a 5-colored blade where Chu Fengmian had been previously. If Chu Fengmian had hesitated for a moment, the five-colored blade would have killed him on the spot. 5 Elements Divine Saber? People from the Avalon of 5 Elements? Chu Fengmian had seen the 5 Elements Divine Saber before, so he recognized it immediately. His gaze was incomparably cold. Chu Fengmian didn't even notice the existence of the person who had attacked before. This person's strength and realm were definitely above Chu Fengmian's. It must be a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu who had attacked. No matter how powerful an 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu was, it was impossible for him to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian. Only a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could do this. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw an old man standing not far away. In his palm, there was a 5 Elements Divine Saber condensed by spiritual power. Obviously, it was him who had suddenly attacked Chu Fengmian. He actually came so quickly. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. The old man's arrival was faster than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Originally, Chu Fengmian was prepared to take all the treasures in front of this person and leave immediately. Now, it seemed that this plan wouldn't work. "Oh? You are indeed worthy of the young Heaven Master's attention. You do have some skills to be able to dodge my attack." While Chu Fengmian was thinking, the old man was also sizing up Chu Fengmian. When he saw that Chu Fengmian had dodged his attack, his eyes flashed with surprise. As a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, no one had expected him to launch a sneak attack on a junior. Now, Chu Fengmian was actually able to dodge it, which was beyond his imagination. "It seems that the nearby Emperor Gu of the Avalon of 5 Elements died in your hands." The old man stared at Chu Fengmian and said with a somewhat cold tone. "Yes, they were courting death." Chu Fengmian said coldly. Anyway, he had already fallen out with the Avalon of 5 Elements. There was nothing he couldn't admit. Courting death? Interesting. "Junior, I think you are the one courting death." The old man's gaze became increasingly cold as he stared at Chu Fengmian. A wave of anger was brewing in his body. The moment the old man stared at Chu Fengmian, it was as if Chu Fengmian was being stared at by a hungry beast. The aura of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu alone was extremely oppressive. Warriors with unstable Dao hearts might be defeated by his aura before they even started fighting. "Kneel!" In an instant, this aura shrouded Chu Fengmian and enveloped him. A huge wave of pressure pressed down on Chu Fengmian, causing him to involuntarily feel a sense of fear. "How dare an old man like you make me kneel? So what if you are Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations? I haven't killed Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations yet. Today, I will start with you." Chu Fengmian's gaze was extremely cold. Since today was the day and he couldn't avoid a fight, then he would fight. Chu Fengmian had always wanted to fight with Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations. Originally, Chu Fengmian's plan was to first obtain the treasures in the bronze door before dealing with this old man. But now, if he didn't kill this old man, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have the chance to get away to collect the treasures. In for a penny, in for a pound, he would kill this old man first. So what if he was Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations? After stepping into the Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian's strength was no longer any different from that of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Ancestor's first style. The dragons roared as spiritual energy condensed in Chu Fengmian's palm. With a loud roar, he slammed his palm down. Chapter 1561. Rumble. Chu Fengmian attacked without holding back. He activated the power of the ancient battle dragon bloodline to the extreme and gathered it in his palm. The claw blasted out like a real ancient war dragon. It was extremely ferocious. In the blink of an eye, it blasted towards the head of the old man. The power of the claw could tear the world apart. It was said that when Ancestor Jianwang attacked, his claw could tear the world apart. Although Chu Fengmian did not have the power of the ancient battle dragon, the power of his attack was similar to Ancestor Jianwang's. Ancestor Jianwang's bloodline? No wonder there is such a mysterious dragon clan martial technique. It seems that the sacred dragon's secret domain does have something left behind by Ancestor Jianwang. The old man saw Chu Fengmian's attack and instantly saw the mystery of Chu Fengmian's claw. He did not dare to be careless. He took a step forward and the blade in his hand flashed as he slashed at Chu Fengmian. The blade rotated and the power of the 5 elements gathered and merged into one. The power of the 5 elements originally belonged to the same origin. However, there were very few people who could combine the 5 elements. The old man's use of the power of the 5 elements had reached the peak. The aura on his body was 5 times stronger when he slashed out with his blade. A dazzling escape light slashed at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian did not retreat when he saw the blade light approaching. He attacked with the claw that contained the first move of the ancestor. The blade and the claw collided in the air. Rumble! The entire bridge shook at the moment of the collision. Countless warriors on the bridge felt the earth-shattering battle. The power of the battle between Chu Fengmian and the old man was almost no different from a battle between real experts of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu level. Every move was earth-shattering. Bam! At the moment of the clash, Chu Fengmian also felt an incomparably huge pressure rushing towards his body. Although the first move of the ancestor was enough to block most of the power of the 5 elements divine saber, a part of it still hit Chu Fengmian's body. However, the shadow of the divine tree condensed from Chu Fengmian's body and blocked all the power of the 5 elements divine saber. The power of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was indeed different from that of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. This was also the first time he had truly fought with the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The progenitor's first claw attack just now could easily kill an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill even Emperor Yi of the past, a genius who had received a power inheritance. However, in the face of Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, the first move of the ancestor did not gain any advantage at all. Instead, a portion of its power was reflected back. The power of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was dozens of times greater than that of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian was astonished, but the old man was even more astonished. He had not held back at all in that slash. It could be said that he had used his full strength. In his opinion, even if Chu Fengmian didn't die just now, he should have been seriously injured. But now, Chu Fengmian only retreated 2 or 3 steps. Although he had the upper hand, such an advantage was meaningless in a battle between powerhouses of this level. This also meant that Chu Fengmian had the power to stand on equal footing with him. The gap between the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was even greater than the gap between true emperors and Emperor Gu. For example, in the Sacred Dragon Secret Realm, the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu was only a Hall Master and a Supreme Elder of the 4 sections. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, on the other hand, was a true upper echelon. The difference in status was enough to prove the difference in power. Both the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu were geniuses recorded in history. There were no exceptions. This person's aptitude is not inferior to the young Heaven Lord. If he continues to develop like this, he will definitely become the second Yunzun. Fortunately, he hasn't entered the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu yet. Otherwise, no one would be able to kill him by then. The elder's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Chu Fengmian. Their current plan was to destroy the Avalon of 5 elements. Naturally, they wouldn't let Chu Fengmian become the second Yunzun. 5 elemental divine saber, extinguish life, exterminate. In an instant, the elder condensed his spiritual energy again and channeled it into the blade in his hand. He took a step forward, not giving Chu Fengmian a chance to breathe, and once again slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Once this saber was unleashed, it would extinguish life as its name suggested. The surrounding space was originally filled with vitality due to the existence of the creation tree branch. However, the moment he unleashed his saber, all of the vitality was annihilated by the blade. Under this saber, nothing was left alive and everything was destroyed. It was a killer move among killer moves. Good timing. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was indeed capable. Chu Fengmian's gaze was incomparably cold. In the face of this saber, Chu Fengmian didn't shrink back. sword light flickered in the World's Edge sword box on his back. Both the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and the Titanic Godly Sword were unleashed. Facing the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian didn't intend to hide anything. With both swords in hand, Chu Fengmian's aura became countless times more ferocious. The sword essence of the Sword God Realm soared into the sky and shrouded Chu Fengmian's body. With a slash of his sword, he clashed with the blade in the air again. Boom! 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 Countless vibrations resounded throughout the entire bridge. Even the martialists who had just entered the bronze door could clearly feel the collision of spiritual powers coming from the depths of the bridge. Chu Fengmian and the Elder exchanged blows. Every move was meant to take the opponent's life and extinguish his vitality without holding back. Could it be that the Five-Elemental Saber Grandmaster is exchanging blows with someone? With this kind of vibration, could it be that there's a second Emperor Gu within the Bronze Gate? On the bridge. Many cultivators had seen the old man enter. Naturally, they knew who could cause such a commotion. However, it was clear that there wasn't only one person involved in this confrontation of power. There was another person. Could it be that the person who could exchange blows with the Five-Elemental Saber Grandmaster is Chu Fengmian? That's impossible. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian is, he's still an Emperor Gu of the Eight Tribulations. How could he exchange blows with the Five-Elemental Saber Grandmaster? But who else could it be other than Chu Fengmian? Since Chu Fengmian could easily kill the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, his strength is indeed close to the level of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. It should be him who's exchanging blows with the Five-Elemental Saber Grandmaster. Guesses were heard. Suddenly, there was another vibration at the Bronze Gate. A figure stepped into the Bronze Gate and stood on the bridge. The power of the universe suddenly descended from the sky. Another Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations. Let's go! When these Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations arrive, it'll be difficult for us to obtain the treasures within. A large number of warriors on the bridge exerted all their strength and walked towards the depths of the bridge. Chapter 1562. On the other side, the battle between Chu Fengmian and the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster had reached a stalemate. Bam! The saber and sword collided. The Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster was temporarily forced to retreat. However, the aura on his body was not disturbed at all. Even if Chu Fengmian used countless sword techniques, the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster would be able to deal with it. With both swords, Chu Fengmian had temporarily suppressed the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster and gained the upper hand. It was easy to suppress the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster, but it was extremely difficult to defeat him. Killing the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster was nearly impossible. Now, Chu Fengmian understood the difficulty of killing the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. It was 100 times more difficult than killing an Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. Unless Chu Fengmian's strength improved, he would not be able to kill the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster. This stalemate is not the way to go. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. He no longer had the intention to continue fighting with the Five-Elements Saber Grandmaster. If this stalemate continued, it would only drag on. If the treasures in this palace were obtained by others, it would be troublesome. Moreover, if this continued, it would also attract other Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian already found it difficult to deal with one Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. If another one came, Chu Fengmian would have to think about how to escape unscathed instead of how to defeat him. Chu Fengmian was thinking about this. Suddenly, the power of heaven and earth descended. Chu Fengmian's expression changed abruptly. The arrival of the power of heaven and earth meant that another Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu had arrived at the bridge. It's the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu of Qi Linshan. This is troublesome. Chu Fengmian sensed the power of heaven and earth and sensed the cultivation technique within. It was Qi Linshan's cultivation technique. The God-spying mirror also warned Chu Fengmian. Good, someone is indeed here. Boy, your end is here. The Five-Elements Saber Master shouted excitedly. At the same time, he sensed that someone had arrived and became extremely excited. Now, Qi Linshan, the Avalon of 5 elements, and the vast ocean city had secretly joined forces. The arrival of Emperor Gu from Qilin Mountain was a great help to him. It was hard for him to kill Chu Fengmian alone, but with the addition of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, the situation was completely different. Now, all he had to do was to delay Chu Fengmian so that Chu Fengmian couldn't get away. When the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu of Qilin Mountain arrived, the two of them could join forces to kill him. 5 Elements Seal, Heaven and Earth Cage. The 5 Elements Saber Master made a grasping motion, and the power of the 5 elements turned into 5 iron chains, surrounding Chu Fengmian from all directions. The 5 iron chains took root in the void and turned the surrounding space into a cage, trapping Chu Fengmian. The power of the 5 elements permeated the cage. It was as if the 5 Elements Saber Master had used all his strength to turn the world into a cage. Not good. Chu Fengmian knew very well what the 5 Elements Patriarch was thinking. Now, Chu Fengmian could still deal with the 5 Elements Patriarch calmly. If the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu came, it would be very troublesome. Especially on this bridge, it was incomparably difficult to escape. Chu Fengmian could already feel that the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu of Qilin Mountain was approaching. In an instant, Chu Fengmian no longer hesitated. He suddenly pointed the sword in his hand to the sky. The stars in the sky seemed to be attracted at this moment, and the power of the stars condensed on the 2 swords. Tan Lang, Ju Men, Lu Ciyuan, Tian Ji. In an instant, 4 sword lights struck out at the same time. Then, the sword Qi turned into a river of stars, bombarding the cage formed by the 5 elements iron chains. Chu Fengmian executed the first 4 moves of the 9 profound sword technique at the same time. After Chu Fengmian stepped into the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu, it was much easier for him to use the 9 profound sword technique. The 4 swords struck out at the same time, and the power of the river of stars condensed. Thousands of sword Qi bombarded the cage formed by the 5 elements iron chains. Rumble. After a series of explosions, the cage formed by the 5 elements iron chains was immediately broken, and the sword Qi swept out. One of the iron chains was the first to break. Then, a chain reaction occurred, and the other 4 iron chains broke at the same time. Immortal Technique. When the 5 Elements Saber Master saw the river of sword lights, the 2 words popped up in his mind. Only an immortal technique could unleash such power, and not a sword technique could do it. The power of the stars, the 9 profound immortal technique. The 9 profound celestial sovereigns cave dwelling was actually obtained by this kid? The 5 Elements Patriarch suddenly thought of the opening of the Immortal Burial Continent. The biggest event of the opening of the Immortal Burial Continent was the opening of the 9 profound celestial sovereigns' cave dwelling. Emperor Gu of the Avalon of 5 Elements had also entered the continent to snatch it, but in the end, all the Emperor Gu of the Avalon of 5 Elements had been killed. No one had been able to leave alive. It had always been a mystery as to who had obtained the 9 mystic immortal venerables' cave abode and the 9 mystic immortal arts. Today, Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship was displayed. The 5 Elements Patriarch immediately understood that it was definitely obtained by Chu Fengmian. Oh no, this kid is trying to escape. In an instant, the 5 Elements Patriarch woke up from his shock. He suddenly struck out a wave of spiritual energy, intending to strengthen the 5 Elements cage. However, as the martial path iron chains broke, the 5 Elements cage could no longer be stopped from collapsing. Chu Fengmian's figure immediately flew out of the 5 Elements cage and rushed towards the direction of the palace. What's going on? 5 Elements Saber Master? Who are you fighting with? Suddenly, a figure flew out from the bridge. It was a middle-aged man. His skin had a dark green color, which was completely different from an ordinary person. The middle-aged man emitted a strong spiritual energy from his body. His strength was no weaker than the 5 Elements Saber Master. Ancestor Bai Luo, you've come at the right time. Let's join hands and kill this person. This person is Chu Fengmian of the Holy Dragon Sect. The 5 Elements Saber Master was overjoyed when he saw this person. This was the reinforcement he had been waiting for. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu of the Qilan Mountain, ancestor by Luo. What? Chu Fengmian? The newcomer from the Holy Dragon sect? 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu? How is this possible? Isn't this person Emperor Gu? Ancestor by Luo suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian when he heard the 5 Elements Patriarch's words. He sized up Chu Fengmian's realm and was suddenly shocked. The Avalon of 5 Elements, the Qilan Mountain, and the vast ocean city planned to join forces to destroy the Holy Dragon's secret dimension and the Holy Dragon sect. Naturally, they had studied all the disciples of the Holy Dragon sect. He had also heard of Chu Fengmian's name. However, in his opinion, Chu Fengmian was only a quasi-emperor, so he did not take him seriously. Chapter 1563. But now, Chu Fengmian had stepped into the realm of 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. In just a few months, his strength had risen so quickly that it was beyond his imagination. Even ancestor by Luo, who had seen countless geniuses, was shocked. Chu Fengmian was an Emperor Gu who had stepped into 8 Tribulation. Emperor Gu who had stepped into 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu was already peerless. 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu was already a legend. Such geniuses no longer existed in history, but in myths. Even Yunzun, who was known as the #1 genius in the Daluo star field, had stepped into the realm of a Supreme Emperor Gu who had stepped into 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Yunzun alone was enough to make the 3 major forces feel extremely troubled. They dared to scheme against the Holy Dragon's secret realm and the Holy Dragon sect because Yunzun hadn't appeared in the Holy Dragon sect for decades. Emperor Gu who had stepped into 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Didn't that mean that Chu Fengmian might surpass Yunzun in the future? Kill him! Ancestor by Luo stared at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian suddenly attacked. A wave of spiritual energy condensed in his palm. His figure flashed and immediately chased after Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had such terrifying aptitude. They couldn't allow him to leave alive. Chu Fengmian was still an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu and hadn't yet reached the peak. Once he became a 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu, it would be extremely difficult for the 3 major forces to deal with him. By Luo Bamboo. With a thought, Forefather Jade Conch unleashed a palm strike. Emerald bamboos sprouted out of the ground and shot toward Chu Fengmian. The bamboo was sharper than a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. The slightest carelessness would pierce through it. It was like an inescapable net that surrounded Chu Fengmian. Pure yang heavenly fire. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold when he saw the countless bamboo encirclement. A colorless flame condensed in his palm and he pointed with his finger. The wisp of pure yang heavenly fire contaminated the emerald green bamboo and burned it into a sea of fire. Fire restrains wood. The most tyrannical of the 9 heavenly flames was the pure yang heavenly flame, which was the nemesis of these countless green bamboos. Although these green bamboos were tougher than heaven-grade spiritual weapons, they were still unable to resist the pure sun sky fire. The countless bamboos that had besieged Chu Fengmian a moment ago were burned to ashes by the pure yang heavenly fire. Pure yang heavenly fire? Innate divine body? Surprise flashed across Ancestor by Luo's eyes. He had naturally heard of the most domineering pure yang heavenly fire among the 9 heavenly fires. However, this kind of flame was not something that could be controlled by a martial artist. Only a celestial being could possibly control it. It was obvious that Chu Fengmian had yet to reach the celestial realm, but he was able to control pure yang heavenly fire. This must be the power of an innate divine body. 5 Elements Saber Ancestor, what are you waiting for? Forefather by Luo let out a long cry. Chu Fengmian possessed the pure yang heavenly fire, which restrained most of his power. It was almost impossible for him to kill Chu Fengmian alone. Divine Saber destroys the world. Before Forefather by Luo's voice died away, 5 Elements Saber Ancestor had already arrived in the sky above Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, he slashed his saber at Chu Fengmian. This slash was incomparably tyrannical and contained the power to destroy the world. With this slash, the heavens and earth would be destroyed. This was his trump card. It descended from the sky and slashed at Chu Fengmian. Do you think I'm unprepared? Sword out. Swoosh. Hundreds of sword chi flew out from the world-edge sword case on Chu Fengmian's back. They intertwined in the air and formed a sword formation. It resisted the slash of the world-edge saber. The world-edge saber bombarded the sword formation. The sword formation was shattered bit by bit, but the saber radiance of the saber was also shattered. Boom! As the battle took place, another powerful force of the heavens and earth descended upon the place. Another Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations had arrived behind the Bronze Gate. The news of the opening of this large treasure trove had probably spread. The surrounding Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations were all rushing here. If this continued, more and more Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations would arrive. Although this Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations was not from the three major powers, there would still be a third Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations who would arrive. But there would always be another Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations from the three major powers. Chu Fengmian was already having a hard time fighting 1 against 2. Now that he was fighting 1 against 3, he had no chance to escape unscathed. Once he was delayed here, Chu Fengmian would be finished. Don't waste time with them. 3 suns. Boom! A wisp of flame condensed on the blade of Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, the sword intent of the sword god realm condensed on the blade. 3 suns blazing sword. The invincible sword technique of the number 1 sword emperor. It was also the strongest move among the thousands of sword techniques of Chu Fengmian's 9 realms sword technique. Retreat, forefather by Luo. The 5 elements saber master saw the power contained in the sword and hurriedly retreated. He had fought with Chu Fengmian for a long time, so he naturally knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was no different from that of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian's opportunities, spiritual weapons, and sword techniques were even more mysterious than those of the real Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations. That was why Chu Fengmian could fight 1 against 2. Even he did not dare to take the power of this sword head-on. Forefather Bai Luo was also aware of this. He took a step back and condensed his spiritual power. Boom! The power on the blade was accumulated to the extreme. Raging flames incinerate the sky. The sword swept across, but what it contained was not sword chi, but fire. A sea of fire formed by the pure yang heavenly flame swept across the entire sky. When the 3 suns blazing sword was at its peak, it could destroy millions of wild beasts. Although Chu Fengmian's 3 suns blazing sword was not as powerful, Chu Fengmian had the divine body of ice and fire, so his control of fire was incomparably mysterious. His slash was a lot scarier than ordinary immortal arts. The 5 elements saber ancestor and progenitor Bai Luo unleashed their trump cards, which turned into barriers to resist the impact of the sea of flames. Now is the time. Let's go! After Chu Fengmian displayed the 3 suns blazing sword, he turned around and flew toward the palace without looking back. Although the 3 suns blazing sword's power was incomparably domineering and comparable to immortal techniques, it was impossible to kill 2 Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations in one blow. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu were all geniuses who had countless fortuitous encounters. Even if they did not have immortal techniques, they must have obtained countless mysterious life-saving methods. This move was only to delay. Chu Fengmian's real goal was to leave first and get the treasure at the end of the bridge. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and he stepped into the palace. He looked at the builder tree branch and suddenly reached out to grab it. Chapter 1564. The builder tree branch was very useful to the divine tree. It could even transform the divine tree. Chu Fengmian couldn't give it up. However, in the instant that Chu Fengmian made his move, countless green bamboos suddenly sprouted out of the ground. Each and every one of them was like a spear that pierced towards Chu Fengmian. Some of the bamboos pierced into Chu Fengmian's body. His flesh and blood crystals trembled under the impact of the bamboos. I can only buy so much time. Chu Fengmian turned his head. The Five Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo had already blocked the Three Suns Flaming Sword and were chasing after him. Chu Fengmian's Three Suns Flaming Sword was neutralized by the two in just a few breaths' time. The Builder Tree Branch? Ancestor by Luo approached the palace and saw the Builder Tree Branch. His eyes were filled with joy. He cultivated a pure wood elemental cultivation method. The Builder Tree Branch could be said to be the ancestor of all trees. Such a huge branch was undoubtedly a supreme treasure for him. Boy, you still want to take the Builder Tree Branch? Today, you and the Builder Tree Branch will stay here together. Ancestor by Luo stared at Chu Fengmian and sneered. He waved his hand. Bamboos grew one after another beside Chu Fengmian, separating him from the Creation Tree Branch. Tens of thousands of green bamboos surrounded Chu Fengmian like a cage, trapping him. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with anger. He originally wanted to delay the two and give him a chance to take the Builder Tree Branch. But now, it was almost impossible to take the Builder Tree Branch in front of the two and escape unscathed. If he wanted to leave now, he would have to give up the Builder Tree Branch. Go! Chu Fengmian made a decision in an instant. He threw down the Builder Tree Branch and his figure flashed. A layer of pure yang heavenly fire burned beside him. The bamboos around him were burned by the pure yang heavenly fire and became extremely fragile. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and swept out his spiritual energy, opening up a gap. Then, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly flew in the direction of the gap. Brat, no matter how you run, you will die here today. The Five Elements Saber Master looked in the direction where Chu Fengmian was about to fly out and sneered. The saber in his hand had already accumulated power. The moment Chu Fengmian broke through the bamboo barrier, the blade moved and slashed towards Chu Fengmian's throat. Tianwang transformation. Chu Fengmian's expression was incomparably calm in the face of the incoming blade. If Chu Fengmian wanted to take away the Builder Tree Branch, it would be extremely difficult. However, Chu Fengmian wanted to escape alone. It was impossible for the two of them to keep Chu Fengmian here. The power of Chu Fengmian's progenitor Jianwang's bloodline was fully activated. The Five Elements Patriarch sneered as he watched the blade approach Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian didn't die, he would be seriously injured. It was only a matter of time before he was surrounded by the two of them. However, when the blade was less than 3 inches away from Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly disappeared. Without a sound, he disappeared from the bridge. Even the Five Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo were shocked. They didn't see Chu Fengmian's escape light at all. This brat actually escaped? The Five Elements Saber Master's expression was somewhat ugly. In his opinion, this was a good opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian, but he didn't expect Chu Fengmian to escape unscathed. Ancestor by Luo closed his eyes tightly as if he was activating a technique. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes and said, "No, this brat is not on the bridge. No, that person is still on this bridge. He hasn't left yet. Instead, he's heading towards the depths. Come, let's chase after him. This brat definitely won't be able to use this kind of secret technique a second time. This bridge should be a dead end. Let's chase after him. This brat won't be able to escape," Ancestor by Luo said as he collected the Creation Tree Branch in the palace. His figure flashed as he chased after Chu Fengmian. In the depths of the bridge, Chu Fengmian's escape light was pushed to the extreme as he flew towards the end of the bridge. This time, I didn't get the Creation Tree Branch. Chu Fengmian's eyes were incomparably cold. Chu Fengmian didn't suffer any losses in the fight with Ancestor by Luo and the Five Elements Saber Master. However, he didn't get the Creation Tree Branch in the end, which made him somewhat vexed. Obtaining the Creation Tree Branch was definitely enough to strengthen the power of the Divine Tree. The Divine Tree had already merged with Chu Fengmian. The stronger the Divine Tree's power, the stronger Chu Fengmian's power would be. A Creation Tree Branch that was half the size of a human was extremely rare. At least in the history of the 9 regions, such a large branch hadn't appeared for tens of thousands of years. I'll find an opportunity to kill Ancestor Bai Luo and get the creation tree branch again. Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness had also seen the scene of Ancestor Bai Luo collecting the creation tree branch. After all, the creation tree branch was a part of the world's #1 divine tree. It wasn't easy to refine it. Chu Fengmian had once arranged an extremely complicated sacred sacrifice in order to refine the 3-inch creation tree branch. In the end, he had succeeded. Now, the difficulty of refining the creation tree branch that was half the size of a human was thousands of times more difficult than the 3-inch creation tree branch. Even though Ancestor Bai Luo was a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, refining the creation tree branch wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. He would need to use countless methods to accomplish it. Therefore, it didn't matter that the creation tree branch was temporarily in Ancestor Bai Luo's hands. As long as Chu Fengmian obtained the treasure at the end of the bridge, his strength would improve. Even if Ancestor Bai Luo and the 5 Elements Saber Master were together, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill him and take back the creation tree branch. As Chu Fengmian pondered, the conveyance light continued to fly towards the depths of the bridge. Chu Fengmian had flown for thousands of miles, but he still hadn't reached the end. The deeper he flew, the more pressure he felt. The pressure on Chu Fengmian's body was also extremely great. The current pressure was enough to make a 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu breathless. Even walking would be extremely difficult for a 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu, let alone flying. As for 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, although they could use the conveyance light, the speed of the conveyance light would be reduced by dozens or hundreds of times under this pressure. Chapter 1565. However, in comparison, the impact on Chu Fengmian was much smaller. Firstly, Chu Fengmian's physical body was extremely heaven-defying. This pressure was borne on Chu Fengmian's physical body, so he didn't need to expend spiritual energy to resist it. Secondly, Chu Fengmian possessed the bloodline of primogenitor Jianwang. Hence, his technique of channeling light was even more mysterious. Hence, his speed was only slightly slower. Behind him, Ancestor Bai Luo and the 5 Elements Saber Master did not possess such techniques. The 2 of them were also flying towards the depths of the bridge. However, their speed of channeling light had been reduced by 90%. After a round trip, the 2 of them had been completely left behind by Chu Fengmian. I've already flown 3,000 kilometers. Chu Fengmian looked around. It was still the same familiar darkness. He could not help but mumble to himself. He had already flown 3,000 kilometers. In the outside world, 3,000 kilometers was not worth mentioning to Emperor Gu. After all, on this bridge, not to mention flying, every step consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Even Chu Fengmian could not withstand it if he did not have the divine pulse. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was stronger than that of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. It could be said that without the divine pulse, the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu would not be able to fly so far in one breath. However, Chu Fengmian was also clear that this bridge was actually a test. Many of these large treasures were deliberately left behind by some experts in the past in order to pass down their legacies. Just like in the cave of the 9 Mystic Celestial Venerable, one had to pass through the 21st floor of the Tongtian Tower in order to obtain the treasures of the 9 Mystic Celestial Venerable. It was the same for this bridge. Only by passing through the bridge and reaching the end could one be considered to have passed the test. Chu Fengmian flew all the way and looked ahead. Suddenly, another palace slowly appeared in front of him. This was a palace. It was still not the end. Just like before, it was a palace that stood on top of the bridge. The gate of this palace was still closed. The restriction on the gate had already decayed. Break! Chu Fengmian glanced at it. He gathered spiritual energy in his palm and struck it with his palm. There was a loud boom. The forbidding formations on the entrance of the palace were all broken. The entrance collapsed, revealing the interior of the palace. In the middle of the empty spot was another purple stone. On this purple stone, there were golden spots that looked like stars. Purple star stone. Chu Fengmian glanced at the purple stone and his eyes flashed with joy. The purple star stone was a kind of refining material. Among the countless refining materials, it was considered to be of the highest quality. It was even said that when refining extreme Dao immoral weapons, some people would add purple star stones. If he could find a grandmaster blacksmith, with the help of the purple star stone and a few other refining materials, he might be able to refine an extreme-grade celestial weapon. However, in the current era, there were no master craftsmen who could refine an extreme immoral weapon. The most basic requirement to refine an extreme path celestial weapon was to be an expert above the celestial realm. Without becoming a celestial, how could he understand the power of a celestial? In the current era, even a celestial realm expert could not be found, let alone a celestial realm grandmaster blacksmith. If Chu Fengmian were to refine the purple star stone, he could at most refine a spiritual sword on the level of the ancestral dragon supreme sword. Now that Chu Fengmian had the ancestral dragon supreme sword and the titanic godly sword, he naturally did not lack spiritual swords. However, the purple star stone was a rare treasure. It seemed that the previous owner of this large treasure trove was also a peerless expert with a strong background. These two palaces should have been deliberately left behind by the owner of this large treasure trove. He should be able to obtain the treasures in the palaces by passing part of the test on this bridge. With a thought, Chu Fengmian clawed his hand and the purple star stone fell into his palm. He then put it away in his spatial ring. Chu Fengmian kept the purple star stone. If one day he really found a grandmaster blacksmith who could refine an extreme-grade celestial weapon, he could use the purple star stone to refine a new extreme-grade celestial weapon. Chu Fengmian put away the purple star stone and flew toward the depths of the bridge in a flash. If there was a first and a second palace like this, there would definitely be a third. Almost every treasure in this palace was enough to make the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu and even experts who were half a step away from the celestial realm fight to the death for it. According to the records in the ancient books, even experts who had stepped into the celestial realm did not have an extreme-grade celestial weapon. Experts who could have an extreme-grade celestial weapon were extremely tyrannical existences in the celestial realm. The value of the Purple Star River was even higher than the creation wood branch that was half a man's height. However, for Chu Fengmian, the creation wood branch that was half a man's height was more useful to him. If the Purple Star Stone was not refined into a spiritual weapon, it was just a material and would not be of any help to Chu Fengmian's strength. As for the creation wood branch that was half a man's height, once it fell into Chu Fengmian's hands, it could be integrated into the divine tree and increase Chu Fengmian's strength. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a bit of killing intent. The Five Elements Saber Master and Ancestor Bai Luo had ruined Chu Fengmian's plan and even besieged him. Chu Fengmian would settle the score with them sooner or later. Let's go! Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and turned into a ray of light, flying deeper into the bridge. The treasures in this palace should be the treasures obtained after passing a part of the test of the bridge. Just passing a part of the test was enough to obtain so many treasures. Chu Fengmian could not imagine how rich the real treasures would be if he passed all the tests of the bridge. As long as there were a few treasures that were comparable to the creation wood branch, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill the Five Elements Saber Master and Ancestor Bai Luo. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian's ray of light continued to fly. However, after passing the test of the 3,000 miles, Chu Fengmian clearly felt that the pressure around him had become even greater. The pressure on Chu Fengmian's body reduced the speed of Chu Fengmian's escape light by 10 times, less than 1/10 of its previous speed. This was the result of Chu Fengmian's incomparably strong physical body and the bloodline of primogenitor Jianwang. If Ancestor Bai Luo, the Five Elements Saber Master and the others came, his speed would be reduced by dozens of times. It was impossible for Chu Fengmian to travel 1,000 miles in an instant. Every time Chu Fengmian's figure flickered, he could only fly a few dozen miles forward. the difficulty of this test is no less than that of the 9 mystic immoral venerables cave dwelling. Who exactly left behind such a large treasure? Why would there be such a difficult test? You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.